All right, thank you everybody for joining us here on our Monday, April 7th, 2025 work session meeting. I invite you all to please join me in standing and reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you everybody for joining us. The first item on our agenda this evening is public comment, recognition of visitors for any items on the agenda or for any other concerns. The Board of Education welcomes comments from the public. Each person wishing to speak is asked to speak into the microphone, identify themselves, and respectively limit their comments to 3 minutes. 2 opportunities to speak are available, one early in the meeting, which will be limited to 30 minutes, and one at the end of the meeting. Each speaker may address the board only once at both the opening and closing portions of the agenda. Please remember there will be no cross-dialogue between speakers and between members of the board. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscene language, libelous statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should present their comments and/or concerns to the superintendent during regular business hours. With that, take it away.
Hi, I don't think this is working. Hello? Okay. Hi, my name is Cynthia Facillo. I am one of the advocates for the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Group, UPK for Cornwall, New York. And I just first wanted to come here to thank all of you that are sitting here today for your hard work, dedication, and commitment to our children, our family, and the district. With that being said, I also wanted to say that we come here again as a group. There's a couple here behind me that are also part of UPK to again show that we really want to prioritize our children first. We feel that the minimum number for that prioritization to show is at least 20 seats. The reason why is because 20 is the number we've had every year. Since 2021, and Terry Day can correct me if I'm wrong on that, since 2021, we've always had that addition of seats. We've always prioritized our children and have expanded properly. So having 10 would not be enough. We really would like to see 40. That would be the goal because we want to become truly universal. We've been doing this for so long, and I love to see that finally see all our kids in the classrooms. I mean, I saw my own little one go through it, and she blossomed from it. And you can see, if you're in a kindergarten classroom, the differences between kids that have been through UPK versus kids that have not. And to talk about the reading, for example, we all know the reading scores have dropped. And we know that early intervention and early education is directly tied into reading literacy. So I just wanted to just commend you all to try to continue to prioritize the children. I know Brendan used to next to me, Terry used to next to me. We made some commitments, and I want to continue up with those commitments every single year. And I just want to see what the board has in mind for that and how we're going to continue to live up to that. I also wanted to ask about, and maybe the superintendent can touch base with me after, about some providers were declined becoming UPK providers, such as Ivy League, and I believe the other one was Village Nursery. So maybe we can touch base as to what the reasons were and is something that we can help them move forward with. And I'd like to see how we plan on doing that. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next.
Good evening, Mr. Dade, school board members. My name is Suzanne Kirshner, and I'm a lifelong resident of Cornwall and a 2004 graduate of CCHS. And my husband and I have chosen to raise our boys here as well. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I would like to talk about UPK specifically in regards to twins. While I understand the lottery system and agree that twins are separate individuals, I want to bring to light an issue. I strongly believe that twins should not be separated for universal pre-K programs unless parents or guardians determine that it is in the best interest for their children. Research shows that keeping twins together can provide emotional security, reduce anxiety, and support social and academic development. For many young children, the transition into structured school environment is a significant milestone, and having a familiar sibling can ease this process. Families have the right to decide what is best for their children rather than being subject to arbitrary school replacement policies. In New York State, parents have a right to request that their children be placed in the same classroom if they are in the same grade level. Currently, I was told that if both my twins got spots in the lottery, that they would not be guaranteed to stay together. My one son received a spot while my other son, his twin, is waitlisted. My biggest issue with this is that if my son that has been waitlisted does receive a spot, you cannot guarantee me that he would be able to be in the same location as his twin. They are forced to go to 2 different schools for the first time in their lives. Aside from the logistical nightmare that this poses for parents for drop-off and pickup, at 4 years old, how do you explain that to them? They have never been separated, and you have taken that choice from us. I don't think there's a parent here that would argue that they would be okay with splitting their children up, having to do 2 drop-offs at 2 different schools for children of the same age, especially that young. We need to look no further than our neighbors, in Washingtonville. They too have a lottery system, and yet twins stay together. If one gets in, they both get in, not just benefiting the children, but also allowing for parental convenience. I'm urging you to not just add spots for the UPK program so that all of our children can go, but also asking that you revisit your policies regarding twins. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment.
Hi, my name is Michelle D'Onofrio. I'm also a member of the UPK for Cornwall group. I'll keep it short since we've been going on. I just want to tack on one more thing. We're also requesting as a group that we would like monies needed for additional slots to be allocated now so that when the board budget is approved by the town, that money is already set aside for the UPK program. Personally, I believe that the UPK program is very beneficial for kids to start out. My son, he's 4, he was put on the wait list for this year. He's already enrolled through CPSD for speech therapy, and I think he would absolutely benefit through being in a program with other kids in a classroom learning. So that's my stance. Thank you very much for all.
Thank you for your comment.
I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but after meeting Michelle and just hearing her story, I just want to, it's a perfect week.
Sorry, Katie, if you could just
I
state your name for the
apologize.
record. Thank you.
Katie Bryce. An educator, lifelong resident of Cornwall. This week, I plan to, with a group of people, charter SEPTA for the school district, and I hope you join. I hope all of you join. It's a way for families to connect and advocacy within the group, or within the community, all are welcome. And I hope everyone in here, taking advantage, there's a lot of people here tonight. I hope everyone is willing to join. And I too stand for UPK and 20 more spots.
Thank you, Katie. Could we give the microphone back to Katie? Could you just share when the SEPTA meeting is?
Yes.
Could you share for those that don't know what SEPTA stands for? And
Yes,
when your
sorry.
meeting is this week. Thank you.
No, of course. So SEPTA stands for Special Education, PTA, like PTO within schools, but SEPTA is a whole district-wide initiative. Cornwall used to have one. Children phased out. They went on to post-high school life, and it's an organization that can be teachers, can be family members, both with children and with disabilities or without disabilities. And it's just an initiative to try and promote more inclusivity, within the community. Did
Thank
I
you.
answer all those? Oh, and the
And
meeting.
when your meeting is when?
I wasn't planning on speaking, sorry. The meeting is this Thursday. It's online. Megan Argenio did pass out an email a few weeks ago. It's online. It's a Zoom. I don't have all the information to me, but if those of you that are on Facebook, it's been posted in several different public groups, and I would be more than happy to pass the information along to anyone interested. Anyone
Thank you.
else?
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dana Spano. I've lived in Cornwall for over 20 years now. I'm here tonight in support of the universal pre-K program as a person who does not have children, who is not planning on having children. It's still very important for me to be a member of a community that does prioritize our youth and our parents. I think it's very important, as everyone has listed, the school readiness, socialization, and just a loving educational place for kids to be with their fellow community members. And that's it. You've got my blessing. Good luck. I hope it all works out.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Victoria Halfpenny. I'm actually here as a parent who does not have a child of preschool age. My children actually are in high school, so far removed from preschool. Last I looked, this was to get the additional slots was not a lot of money. I know the budget is exceedingly tight. I know that's what everyone is looking at. But when you look at the investment in adding literally 10 more slots and the cost, I think it's well worth the investment. It draws people to the community. It helps with, it just really, really helps the kids, the community, and our houses, which I know our property values are something that everyone is always top of mind. So I just wanted to come as a parent and speak tonight as someone who's not directly benefiting at least their children in terms of being in the UPK program.
Thank you very much. Do we have other commenters?
Hi, good evening. My name is Amy McGovern, and I own the Ivy League Preschool. I'm a New York State licensed educator, and I have my permanent teaching certifications. I taught the Universal Preschool program in the New York City School District before I moved to Cornwall 23 years ago. I built the preschool in 2002 and opened on December 31st. So I come to the board as a tax-paying Cornwallian and a business owner asking for the possible 10 to 20 new UPK seats in the upcoming 2025-2026 school year. I believe that more students could be included if all the UPK daycares charge the same flat rate. Currently, Cornwall taxpayers are paying approximately $4,500 a year per 98 UPK students, or $441,000 a year added to taxes. That is in addition to the $5,500 per student, or $539,000 that New York State pays per school year for the UPK program. Also, these centers charge for before and after school care, which on average can run up to $7,000 a year for working parents for each student. After reviewing the cost for the program versus what the Cornwall taxpayers have to pay, I suggest a flat rate fee that would either add more UPK students or lower Cornwall's tax contribution. Other districts charge a flat fee, and you can either choose to accept the fee or not. Newburgh pays its outside providers $6,150 per student, and those providers receive from Newburgh Central School District and New York State in total. Regardless of whatever grants Newburgh receives, the providers get the exact same amount, and the students go to school for 6.5 hours as opposed to Cornwall's 6 hours. One of Cornwall's providers takes Newburgh students at the flat rate fee and Cornwall students, so it can definitely be done. We just need to demand better for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else for public comment?
Hi, I'm Maria Cavillion. I have 2 kids, one graduated and one currently in 8th grade in the district. I am also a special ed teacher with the Early Intervention Program. I work with preschoolers as a SEIT, special education itinerant teacher. I see some children at Ivy League Preschool. I learned that she is not an approved UPK provider, and I don't know why. She has the room. I feel like there's no reason why she shouldn't be if she has the room in her building. I can tell you that some parents, unfortunately, cannot afford to send their kids to private preschool. A lot of these parents are parents of my kids, my clients, I call them my kids. Without UPK, those kids are going to be left behind. They're going to start kindergarten behind schedule. So that's one reason. Another thing I can mention is, as a SEIT, I have fellow CEITs that I work with who don't provide services at homes. Most of the time, CEIT is done in a daycare center. It can be provided at home, but a lot of CEITs don't like it just because there isn't a nice routine that you have in a classroom. So I know that Cornwall is always looking for CEITs. I know there's kids waiting for CEIT services. If these kids are not in school, whether it's daycare or UPK, sometimes they won't get the services they need, and that is doing a disservice to them.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anybody else who would like to make a public comment to our board? Great. Well, thank you all very much for your comments, and certainly the board listens to all those. I will repeat myself. We haven't had a robust comment session like this in a while. Just to say, we do not answer. It can sometimes be a dissatisfying endeavor. We don't provide immediate answers. Some things need research. We did update our procedures as a board a couple years ago that I could provide an answer to some queries at the next meeting, which we will do, and certainly we will be discussing UPK seats as part of our budget presentation this evening. So thank you all for your comments. Next item on our agenda is a music presentation from Mr. Ravinsky. Would you like to say anything, Terry, or just kick it? Take it away, T-Rav.
How you guys doing? We are here to honor our state musicians for the evening. So we're going to start. Can I bring down, please, as I'm going to talk about them, Christian and Hunter, can you come on down? So you can stand here awkwardly with me, too, while we talk about you guys. This is how this rolls. All right, here we go. Every year, the New York State Band Directors Association puts on a three-day honor band festival in Syracuse. Students from all over the state auditioned and are hand-selected to perform in either the jazz ensemble or the symphonic band. This year, one of our students from CCHS was selected for the jazz ensemble, and he was one of 4 students representing Orange County in this jazz ensemble. There's only 18 musicians in the jazz ensemble, so this is a huge thing. Christian Green was the first tenor saxophone player in the jazz ensemble, one of only 2 tenor saxophone players, so huge accomplishment for him. We are going to continue talking about our state musicians. Each year, approximately 6,500 sophomores and juniors prepare a New York State School Music Association solo in hopes for be considered for one spot in an all-state honors ensemble. This year's Cornwall Central High School is happy to announce that one of our students has been selected into this ensemble, and one was selected as an alternate. So Cornwall Central High School is incredibly proud of Christian Green as being selected as an all-state alternate for the 2nd year in a row for the jazz saxophone. And Hunter Olson was selected for the 2024 All-State Wind Ensemble. He was one of 6 trombones in the highest wind ensemble in the state. Hunter performed at the All-State concert on Saturday, December 6th, in the gorgeous Kodak Hall and Eastman School in Rochester. This concert is a culmination of performance, not only the hours spent in rehearsal, starting on Thursday, December 5th, but of years in practice and lessons mastering the trombone. These 2 guys, this is not an easy thing to do, and these 2 guys have been working extremely hard, and we're so proud of them here at Cornwall for everything they've done. So congratulations, gentlemen. We got a photo op coming. Smile from as well. And proud dad. There we go. Hey, congrats, guys. And if we don't mind, I'm going to slide into the other hat. Okay, so that was the high school hat. By the way, Mr. Hoover says sorry he wasn't able to make it. He had to go home for his daughter. He hasn't been home a lot because of the musical, so he went home for the little one. So here we go. So that was that slide. Uh-oh. Wait, maybe we were doing this? Yep, they were doing that. There we go. Music in Our Schools Month was back in March, and the CCSD Music Department wanted to share some really good news. This is the best part about my job. We get to gloat about our children and all the amazing things that they were doing, so I'm very excited to be able to do this, and thank you for giving me your time. All of our musicians performed great at all of their winter concerts this past few months. Thanks to all who came to watch, and especially to the parents for continuing to support and encourage our student musicians to strive for excellence. The 2nd graders over at Willow Avenue in COH have worked hard this past fall to compose their own music digitally. The students familiarized themselves with digital audio workstations, DAWs, and musical samples to create an original piece with a title. Our middle school students have been practicing their breathing techniques for chorus and playing ukuleles in the middle school ukulele club. The fourth grade band and orchestra students participated in our instrumental recital on March 4th. 87 students performed as soloists or in small groups. The CCMS band was very busy during the holiday season and continued its annual tree lighting performance. Along with this, they played the annual Wreaths Across America at St. Thomas of Canterbury. So February was a very busy month for the CCSD music department. Everyone's like, there's downtime, right? It's between the two concerts. Nope, we always find time to showcase our students and have them perform. So February 3rd, the 8th grader band and orchestra students visited the high school to learn about the high school program and to help the transition into next year. The CCSD choral students came together on February 13th to participate in the choral workshop. All the choral students performed for each other, and then they all sang together Shine Like Stars as the grand finale with over 700 students performing. Turning the page. If I wasn't on script, I would talk way too long. So that's how we're working with this. The CCSD band students had their band expo on February 18th. Every band in the district played a piece, and then they closed the concert with America the Beautiful, with just under 300 students performing together. The CCSD orchestra students will have their string showcase in May. Last month, the high school had their annual a cappella night, which featured our concert choir, treble choir, and a cappella groups. All these groups worked with a Vassar College a cappella group the night before to polish up their performances for the evening. Going on the drama end of things, the theater, the CCHS Drama Club was honored to be the New York State high school premiere of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child this past fall. This massive undertaking was a challenge and an honor for all involved. We thank the community and Drama Club alumni for coming out in record numbers to support our efforts. The CCMS Drama Club recently produced Oliver that had 130 participants both on stage and off. Rehearsal started back in December, and 2 of their 3 formal performances were sold out in the auditorium. The CCHS Drama Club and Music Department just closed Once Upon a Mattress this past weekend. The musical comedy featured 150 students either on stage, backstage, or in the pit. That number just blew my mind this past weekend. 150 kids. We had 75 on stage plus crew and 60 in the pit this year. So if you think of 4 grades in the school around 300-ish, it's an eighth of the building. So very, very proud of that and thrilled that all of those students got that opportunity to perform this weekend. Change the slide. Here we go. The elementary PTO drama clubs have also been very busy this year. Back in January, the Cornwall Elementary School PTO produced an amazing production of The Lion King with 127 students. And last month, the COH PTO produced a thrilling performance of Newsies. The Willow Ave production of Aristocrats will be coming this Thursday. There's your plug. Here we go. We had many successful auditions this past year, and many of our students have been accepted into honor ensembles around New York State. These students prepared a challenging audition piece and rose to the top of the section to be in these prestigious ensembles. We have over 100 students, and those of you who have the packet, I put all the names in there. I will not read all the names, but we had 1 all-state musician with an alternate. We had 1 New York State Band Director Association musician. We had 11 area all-state Zone 9 musicians. We had 30 OCMEA high school all-county musicians. We had 9 jazz all-county musicians. We had 31 junior high all-county musicians, and we had 25 elementary all-county musicians. The junior high and elementary concerts are in April and May, and we're excited to be participating in those. So, some upcoming things. Some of these I've talked about. Obviously, we said Aristocrats will be headed on Willow Ave this weekend. The COH Jazz Combo will be doing a jazz appreciation concert this month up in the library at the high school. The Cornwall Central School District String Showcase will be happening in May. The CCMS Music Department will be headed to Six Flags Great Escape for an adjudication in the beginning of June. And as I mentioned earlier, our junior high and all county festivals. This is in addition to prepping for concerts. arts. So a lot of stuff is happening, and we're really excited. Next year, looking forward, CCHS will be hosting 2 music festivals coming up next year. We are hosting Orange County's High School All-County Festival, which we traditionally do in January, but this is the new one. We'll also be hosting and chairing the New York State School Music Association's Area All-State Festival in November, which is a large undertaking for the department and supporting the state's music association. As always, thanks for your continued support of the arts here at CCSD and noticing the importance that it has for all these young adults as they grow up to make the world a better place. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Ravinsky. I'll just add, it's great to see this as a board as we're debating the budget today, you get stuck in the numbers and having discussions, and it can be kind of boring, and to remember why we're up here and who we're working for is great. So thank you for your presentation. And congratulations to Hunter and Christian for making All-State very, very prestigious honor for them. So next item on our agenda is committee updates. I will go in order of my sheet here. Policy Committee, Brendan.
Yeah, next meeting will be our spring batch, which will also include those policies which we've removed from the last round, but typically have that in late May, early June, so we're on track for that.
Great. And I will violate I'm going to go off my sheet order to stick with you on communication.
Sure. We are about ready to dive headlong into the budget communication season. So I talked with Mr. John Fink just on Friday about getting the budget newsletter off the ground, and we're doing that. So working with the committee to get pull together ideas for what that quote unquote budget narrative is going to be this year. And then we're also going to start the process on scheduling the community forums and kind of deciding how exactly we want to handle it this year. Might go beyond just a forum here in the CES cafeteria, may do some further outreach, but we will keep everyone posted on that. And then also everybody's favorite, the budget explainer videos we'll be making. It's their glorious return this year as well.
Great, thank you. Next on my item here, I have visitation. Richard, you're here with us today. You weren't here last week. Our last time we had committee reports. I understand your committee sat down and met with Terry. Anything to report that we didn't hear at the last report from Carl?
So yeah, I would just say that we did have what I felt a very productive discussion about the things that were brought up, specifically space utilization observations that we had. And I think there's been some brainstorming, and I'm hopeful that, things will look better in the future. The only other thing that I will mention is, and I'm not saying this to, point fingers at anybody, but communication was brought up by a few staff members, and just the importance of having timely responses from, building administrators, et cetera. Again, I'm not throwing the blame at anybody, but I just think it's important that, we look at that.
Great.
But thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have facilities. We had a meeting a week ago today. We had, I apologize, we put up, there was a presentation from our architects, Tetra Tech, as well as Palumbo Group. We put that up on the website. I meant to email that out to the board. I will do that follow-up for you guys to look at that. I didn't get a chance to do that before our meeting. Short version is Palumbo Group, our construction manager, presented. We are, on our way to do the work that is scheduled this summer. Highlights of the work this summer are finishing the high school athletics multi-sport facility complex, which is expected to be done around mid-August. COH getting new windows throughout the building and a couple new bathrooms. A lot of paving work right behind us here at Lee Road. Those are the major projects that are being undertaken this summer. The architects came and presented looking at two projects that have bubbled to the top for our next bond vote that we will take out to the public. One of those being a student drop-off area at the middle school. The short version is, obviously, if anybody's tried to drive on Main Street when middle school pickup, it backs around the street. So they presented some plans to actually come in on Lee Road and go around the football field there and back and create a drop loop in the back of the school, the rear of the building, as well as the cafeteria, not the cafeteria, but the actual kitchen area in the middle school. There are some structural issues with where that is. Needs to be shored up underneath. In addition to that, it's just not laid out. It's not the most effective use of the space for the way that the food services program uses that space right now. So they presented a few concepts for us to reimagine that. So work will continue on those two projects to get money behind that, and we are trying to target a vote to go out to the public. We have $5 million, as you know, in our Capital Reserve Fund number 2. So to spend that money with state aid on capital projects, targeting a November-December timeline next year for a vote on that, subject to change, but that's where we're at right now. So any questions on facilities? I'll email that document out so you can go more in depth, but I think that's the highlights. Okay, and then the next two I have our audit, which is Christian, and if you just want to roll right into OXPA, you attended that meeting last week. There was some timely information which you emailed to us if you want to just hit some of the highlights and provide context there. Thank you.
So audit has finished its work until the next internal audit, which should, if we are on schedule, perhaps in June, and we hopefully bring it before the end of this this board year. On to OXPA. So the OXPA meeting last week, there was a presentation by David Shaw and one of his colleagues, who name I don't have in front of me, from the law firm Shaw, Perelson and Lambert. I'm leaving out her name. Give me 1 second. Shaw, Perelson, May, and Lambert. And they presented a presentation on the legal issues on a variety of different things that are occurring now, including some of the federal initiatives regarding DEI, the student representative on the board, some information on trends in collective bargaining, and that was the thrust of. There were a few other small items, but as I shared the PowerPoint with all the other members of the board, you can see it there. I would say, if I had to summarize the presentation on DEI, I would say the take-home message was New York state law says one thing and binds us to one thing, and the federal initiative says another thing. And we have taken oaths as school board members, speaking generally, not just the people here tonight, but school board members in general in New York State, to uphold the Constitution of both those entities, and that there really is not a clear path forward. And he basically presented it as a hard decision, and a decision that will be ahead of us. The collective bargaining I'm not going to discuss here. I think it was basically just showing what trends are, and I think you have the information. And the last one was on the student representative or ex officio representative on the board. And one part that came is that we need to have a policy, and I think it's generically number 2245, on that by July 1st. And I think we probably need to accelerate that policy even outside of the policy committee to hit that date. I have draft language, but it might be something that we might want to do as a committee as a whole, but I'll just put that out there, and we can discuss whether that's a way to go forward. So that'll be it'll be operational for the upcoming school year.
I assume that you checked, I haven't checked, that we do not currently have a policy?
We do not currently, we do obviously have a representative. We do
Right.
have to have a policy, and that lays out specifically that, in a sense, enshrines that
Sure.
in policy, and also the method of selection, and also how many board members, as well as their responsibilities, and also that they would have some of the similar responsibilities, but also the limitations. For example, they would not be allowed into executive session and have a vote
Right.
on certain things,
Right.
but they would be entitled to what other information is provided to board members.
Yeah. My question on this has been, we have our student representatives, you can see they're not here tonight, we have them come to our business meetings, but not our work sessions. Is there any guideline on the new state law of how, do they have to attend every single meeting or what, you know?
I think the way it was stated was that they are invited to every meeting.
Okay,
And obviously, like, sometimes people adults on the board don't come to every meeting.
sure.
But that they would have that privilege to come to every meeting and speak at every meeting. I think I discussed my previous, when we did committee updates, because there was a discussion among the OXPA representatives about this kind of as a policy issue, because some districts are doing this for the first time. And I think I won't repeat myself, but I think that there's some things that they found worked better, including, let's say, having 2 representatives, but also staggering it, a junior and a senior, and making it a 2-year term. And so anyway, the point is, I think that's something for our discussion, and I think that we probably need to start on it soon to get it done by July 1st.
So, unless anybody has any objection, I'll say this. If you could, I think, just email that policy to the policy committee, and if you guys can all agree on a draft, send that to Terry and or myself, and we can include that on our next meeting as a first read. I don't think we need to call an official meeting just to review, you know, assume you're just pulling the draft NISPA policy and possibly polishing it a little bit, but.
So just one thing, just because I think there are some choices to be made. For example, how the delegate is selected. There is I think a model policy on NISPA's website, but they leave open, and that was in the PowerPoint that I circulated, that they, I think, outlined about 5 to 7 different ways that you could select it. And all those are legitimate, and we could just, so the point is, there's a discussion there, but that could be discussion for the board when the policy is presented, and we can change the language then.
So let's enshrine what we currently do, which is selection by high school building administrators. Right.
That would not be my preference.
But I'm saying, just to start, that's what we do. We need a policy by July 1st. So let's enshrine what we currently do, and then we can, what's the best way to have a discussion about this? With the communications committee, put it on a future board agenda for just all of us to discuss. I'm open to suggestions there.
I think it depends on what is required by July 1st. If it's just to have a policy, then I agree with what you said. Have some stopgap policy that enshrines what we have, and then put it through the policy committee in the spring, in our next meeting.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's just try to fast track enshrining what we currently do, and then policy committee, if you guys want to have a discussion at your next meeting on, you know, ways to improve what we're doing, that would be great. Wonderful. Anything else from OXPA, Christian?
There was just some discussion about internal things, their reorganization meeting for the year. The candidates for the board of OU BOCES were there and kind of spoke briefly, but we covered that in a previous meeting. I think we've already made an endorsement, or we cast our vote as a school board. And then the June meeting, which everyone is invited to, which is kind of the reorganization meeting where they elect officers for the upcoming year, as well as they recognize school board members who are retiring or who are not returning. And obviously, anyone who would fall under that would be invited to that, but I think that we will get emails on that from Karen Meyer.
Great, thank you very much. So I believe that's all of our committees. Next item is the, go ahead, Bess.
Just, I want to add quickly, I have some publications from OU BOCES. I went to their budget presentation
Okay.
last week, and they do have a lot of information, good information about BOCES, and 4 documents total. And one of them is Cornwall specific enrollment and numbers and our participation, our students in different programs, different schools. Some good information, you can go through it, and they're doing some great service. I mean, they had presentation from students working on different programs, 3D printing and some health kind of, like nursing, and they did demonstrate what they're doing. I mean, they're doing great things for our county and Ulster's as well.
Great, thank you, Bess. And we will be voting on that on April 24th here, I'm seeing on our budget calendar, so on the BOCES budget. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Use of the consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and then that item will be considered and voted on separately. So can I have a motion for items 2 through lucky number 13?
So moved.
And can I have a second? Second from Christine. And then who wants to pull out any numbered item here for separate discussion? Christian?
Number 4, approval of 25-26 BOE meeting schedule.
Okay. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Okay. So let's then vote on items 2 and 3 and 5 through 13. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Item number 4, approval of the 25-26 BOE meeting schedule. Christian.
So 2 points on the proposed schedule. The first one is on the May 4th date. Like this year, this would fall outside the window as designated by the state. I think we have to have that meeting. And therefore, I would suggest moving it now as opposed to moving it later. So I think the school board, the budget vote is on May 19th. It has to be within 2 weeks, and that would be May 5th would be the opening of that window. And so, like we are moving the May meeting to Tuesday, I think we should move that to Tuesday now. So that's the first point.
Did I see a head nod there, John? Okay. So May.
I mean, it could be any date, but it has to be between May 5th. May 5th is this first date, it could be.
So as opposed to May 4th, 2026, update that to May 5, 2026.
And perhaps make a designation like we usually do that this would be differently than a Monday meeting to a Tuesday meeting just for.
We can absolutely notate that. I was going to actually look at that later, knowing that it's 13 months in advance, but why not hit it now rather than later? Yes,
so that's
absolutely.
So that's a technical change.
Great.
The second one is the November meeting dates, and I would like to move those November dates to the 10th and 27th. The reason is that I am a New York State Teacher Retirement System delegate, and that is the date of the convention. And I wouldn't ask except that it is a school-related thing that's fairly important, and there is no alternate and there's no proxy vote for that.
I would note that November 27th is Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think you potentially misspoke on your date
there.
there.
So, I'm sorry, November 24th. I'm moving it 10 days, and I meant to move it 7 days to move it 1 week. So the 10th and the 24th.
I'm pulling up a calendar here. Yeah, I mean, the 24th is the Monday after Thanksgiving. I think we had a meeting.
Monday before.
Is it the Monday before? Excuse me.
And
it
then
is the Monday before.
And the 10th, I believe, is the Monday before Veterans Day.
Veterans Day, yeah.
Yeah, I would. I guess that why the request to move both, Christian?
Because I think that the reason why we have them at a 2-week stagger is because of the amount of business between those dates. And therefore, if we did just move the first one, the 3rd to the 10th, then we would have 2 meetings a week apart, and I just think that would be prudential. I think we've done things in the past when there have been vacations or closures of schools, spring break, that have hit into what would have been a 2-week stagger between the 2 meetings per month.
Right, but if you move the one back to the 24th, then you're running into the same issue with December 1st.
So
on the back
end. I understand that we've had 1 meeting a month in the past. For example, I believe December was only 1 meeting because of just how the dates felt. I explained my reason for wanting it moved. I would also say that we moved the board retreat that was already scheduled for certain people's, as a courtesy. and I would just ask the same courtesy.
Yeah, no one's arguing against that. I'm just trying to understand the whole calendar and how it fits together.
May I ask, Christian, what is the date of the conference you're speaking of, just so I have context on the calendar?
So it is the 2nd and the 3rd, and it's held in upstate New York. It is the New York State Teacher Retirement System Convention, which is used to elect the delegate to the board.
I just didn't know if it was all week. I was trying
No, it's just 2 days.
Would it be easier, and I don't know if there's rules around this, Mr. Fink, to shift it to like Wednesday the 5th instead, and it keeps us on our cadence, but allows for that education conference?
I would concur with Christine. I was going
might be
to
easier.
suggest the same thing. I'd be opposed to the 10th just being the day of a weekend to a holiday, but certainly willing to accommodate.
So that would also, I have no problem with that, moving that date. I would just note, just in case, so while we're thinking about dates way in the future, that the 4th obviously is Election Day. And I would also note, we have one other thing that's probably going to happen this fall we haven't scheduled yet, and this might involve moving meetings, which is that we have a planned capital project vote sometime in the fall, and that's probably going to impact some of these dates and schedules because of what we would like to do as a presentation or other types of things around that. And I don't know exactly what date people are thinking about, but that's going to fall somewhere in there.
Sure, and that would happen regardless. To me, moving it 2 days feels less cumbersome, and if we need to make bigger changes next year.
So Christine, as often the case, when you make a suggestion, you're right. And I think...
Don't give me that much credit.
No, I would say that thank you for proposing something better than I could come to myself, and I think that addresses the concern.
We could go the week before and just go Friday, October 31st, Friday Halloween meeting. Do you have any objection to Wednesday the 5th? Yeah, I mean, obviously, we just try to keep everything on Monday because people just expect it's every other Monday, but as long as it's notified, far in advance, we do certainly have meetings that are not on Monday. I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out here. So let's notate then November 5th, 2025, Wednesday, and May 5th, as opposed to November 3rd, and May 5th, Tuesday, 2026, as opposed to May 4th. Any other questions, comments? I guess I had a question on it while we've opened it, Terry. You've got the reorganization meeting on Monday, July 14th. Is there a reason to not do that Monday, July 7th?
So a fellow parent on the board kind of joined me in my kind of light frustration with that Monday being a prime vacation weekend. It's preparation for the board side and the administration side. So we just said if there's wiggle room, why are we doing it right in 4th of July weekend time period where a lot of Cornwall is on vacation?
I assumed as much.
So not that I'm asking you to rearrange anything, but just for the record, I'm out of town the week of the 14th.
And that's the tough part is everyone's...
Is there a requirement that it's after July 1? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But is there an additional requirement that it has to be within a certain time from the beginning of July?
By the 15th.
By the 15th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think it would behoove to do it? So you're saying the whole week of July 4th plus the following Monday isn't?
I just tried to move it off of the...
Okay. I just feel like that's a little bit late for a reorg meeting personally, but I'm certainly open to suggestions or thoughts from anybody else.
Can we move the day instead of a Monday?
I was going to say if we're coming off of Mondays, we could do it. I went too far. Right, we could do it Wednesday the 10th or Thursday. I'm in June. Excuse me. Let's go to July of 2026. We could do Wednesday the 8th or Thursday the 9th.
Tuesday the 8th or Wednesday the 9th? Oh, 26, you're correct. Sorry, Jim.
It's Back to the Future here. Excuse me.
Tuesday the 8th or Wednesday
We are, I have this problem every year with this format. Could you do me a favor? You put the 2025 meetings at the bottom, below 2026. Can you take those 3 meetings and move them to the top? Because I think this is the 3rd year in a row I've entered them into my calendar wrong. And that's not your fault, that's my fault. So we're discussing July 2025. I will get off my calendar of July 2026.
If you're contemplating this so that we're all in attendance, I had my date wrong and I will be here the 14th.
Okay.
I leave on the 15th. I'm just ready to go. Okay, I didn't want to.
Okay. All right, so we will keep it the 14th then. So we're just going to vote on this with those 2 changes, November 3rd changing to November 5 and May 4 changing to May 5. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. That is the end of our consent agenda. And I believe that brings us to John and your budget presentation. Take it away, please, John.
Thank you very much. April 7th, here we are. We've made some nice steady progress for our budget presentation, so we're going to try and start to wrap up with today's presentation, and then there will be one more after this. So we envision a school district in which every staff member is a source of knowledge and inspiration, every building is a place of safety and support, and every leader is a pillar of integrity, and every student is a source of pride. Our sources of pride are up there. Mr. Ravinsky also talked about all of our sources of pride. So happy to see all these faces up there. On our agenda this evening, a little bit of additions for us. So we're going to talk about the recommended budget and the recap. We're going to talk about the needs assessment and the Board of Education's discussion from last time we met, the adjusted budget and the options, New York State aid projections, and I will admit right now, I lost the bet to Jim Cregan, friendly bet, that of course the aid did not come out on time. So, tax levy, approval rating and history, some contingency budget information, and then we'll talk about our capital reserve proposition. So, familiar slide, where we've been. So we've talked about this slide a couple times, so just a little recap about this presentation. Looking at a recommended budget of $92,721,136. And then we talked about our revenues and how we meet those revenues. We have a revenue budget of $90,364,425. And that included a 2.5% tax levy increase. And then we used a assigned fund balance of $2,356,711 to balance that. That gave us a balanced budget, revenues matching our expenditures. So that's where we last left off. The board jumped into some discussion at our last meeting. So based on that March 24th board discussion, we talked about some additions to that budget, that recommended budget. So the first one was adding in the district-wide strategic plan at about $45,000. The second addition was 2 safety monitors, specifically at Willow Ave and the middle school, with a price tag of about $128,740. I have a highlighted little area up there about a 1.0 FTE early intervention support teacher, and I'm going to just pause on that for just a second. The board also discussed universal pre-K, adding 10 additional seats. The cost is up there at about $35,670. And then we talked about increasing the uncertified substitute teacher compensation for about $7,000. So total all in about $216,702. So I met with the superintendent. Superintendent Dade asked that we insert this line into this budget as a kind of swap, right? If there's an administrative recommendation for discussion, it would be to put in that early intervention support teacher, and that would be a split between COH and Willow. And that would replace that $128,740. A little less money than what we originally anticipated, but we think we can make it work based on our finances. So again, the total cost on the budget addition would be about $216,000. So kind of swap in, swap out for the board to discuss here. This would then result in an adjusted expenditure budget. So $92,934,122. So then the board also discussed at the March 24th meeting some options that they'd like. So we have option A, option B, and option C. And what do those different options mean? Up here, you'll see the different highlighted areas are drawing out that information. So in option A, we left the tax levy the same at 2.5, and then relied more upon that assigned fund balance. We increased the amount that we are increasing the budget by placing that all into the assigned fund balance. For option B, we said we'll take that additional money and put it on the tax levy. And the tax levy comes out to be a 2.91% increase when we add those additions in. And we left that assigned fund balance the same. That's at $2.3 million. And then option C takes it and just splits it. We split the difference. You get a tax levy of 2.7, and your assigned fund balance is going to be $2.4 million. So again, this will be some of the discussion the board can have related to this previous slide, slide 5 up here with the needs assessment, options related to that, and then we can discuss where we want to go from here. As I mentioned earlier about the aid projections, New York State has let me down again. April 1st has come and gone, and we don't have a budget. Although I believe they are a little bit closer. They were squabbling over cell phone use, which I believe has been agreed upon. So now it's like, let's get the dollars going and that flowing so we all can do our budget. So up here, you'll see the same slide as last week with scenario 1, what we can do if we receive more aid than we currently project. So you have the option to reduce your tax levy, reduce the amount of assigned fund balance, a combination of both. Do nothing and allow that money to go into next year's surplus, or expand recommended expenditures, so programming, staff, and capital. Or scenario 2, if we receive less state aid than we projected, we can increase the tax levy, we can increase the amount of assigned balance, or a combination of both. Again, so similar to that option A, B, and C. Recycling this slide as well, tax levy and approval rating history. This is really the past 10 years of what our tax levy, our maximum allowable tax levy has been, what our voted on and approved tax levy has been, and what our approval ratings has been. So you're looking at a 10-year average of 1.66 adopted levy from a 2.62 maximum allowable and a 66% approval rating. We talked last time about contingency budget, so I won't repeat this myself on this, but we do want to keep in mind and be aware of what some of our options are should we need to go there. These 2 slides really spell out the overall look of a contingency budget with the restrictions, so no increase to the tax levy, maintaining no purchase of buses or equipment. So again, rules and restrictions, the field trips, that would be critical to us here in Cornwall. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of our contingency budget needs. On the May 20th ballot, we'll keep emphasizing this, is the establishment of a new capital reserve fund that we will look to fund with surplus from our expenditure budget or our revenue budget, whichever we have at that time, with a maximum value of $5 million. As I said in the beginning, I'll say at the end here, we've made significant progress throughout our calendar. It's April 7th. Our next meeting will be Thursday, April 24th, and that will be our budget adoption day. So we will need to make sure that we're all buttoned up on that day, before that day. And then the 6th will be our annual budget hearing. That's Tuesday the 6th. And then the vote is Tuesday, May 25th. So relatively quick today, 12 slides, but I'm sure the discussion will go lengthy.
Before we start discussion, I've got a couple questions for clarification. April 24th, what if New York State has not agreed to a budget by April 24th?
We still have to adopt the budget.
So we just take our best guess?
Yep.
Okay. Which, you know, look, this year the school funding has not been a great area of dispute, according to the news reporting, as it was last year. So it seems, if anything, we should be pleasantly surprised, because the Senate and the House, their one House budget, have each been more than what the governor proposed in her budget. So
that's correct.
Yeah.
So I thought that's why I thought we'd be done last week.
And then another question for clarification, if you can go on back to slide 5. And I just, I sidebarred this with Terry, but so currently today, we have a full-time early intervention teacher split between COH Willow and, you know, in addition to somebody full-time in this building at Lee Road that we're sitting in. It was my impression that in the initial needs assessment that we were debating adding a second person, so COH could have a full-time, Willow could have a full-time. And I just sidebarred with Terry, but if you just want to confirm that that was one of the positions that was not backfilled due to a retirement?
Yes, so appreciate the question. So after last meeting, we had questions, I believe, from Eleonora and Christine, who were really trying to get at this. Mr. Hines spoke about it at the end, and I had kind of the same question. So as the board moved away from the admin recommendation of leaving the needs assessment alone and just sticking with attrition and things of that nature, the board started talking about some things from the needs assessment, which we were trying to get at. Would that still be our priority, something on the needs assessment, or would we look back at the 5 positions that were being subsumed through retirements, et cetera? So I went back, rallied teams to just kind of talk through scenarios to see what was happening. To Jim's question, Willow and COH currently have a shared kindergarten AIS position. The positions that were subsumed through retirements were push-in teachers that came about during the pandemic through federal funds that our board decided to kind of step down over the years. So both Willow and COH had retirements that we subsumed those positions to take care of the 322K. So in our analysis, we said, well, they're both losing a position, so would it benefit the students at COH and Willow to at least add back a shared position that might support students in grades 1 that CES might have? So that's why we put it up as a recommendation. The second part that I wanted to share with the board is I also discussed with the principal of Willow and CCMS what would happen if your positions weren't approved, the safety monitors. So this is why I left it as we would like the board's direction on which of the 2 we would support, because I'm particularly more confident in the middle school's ability to handle this because they have a greeter position. Willow does not. So the function of a greeter at the top landing of CCMS, it's a great let people in, greet them. There's tons of notes, including myself, dropping things off for Ada. So it's a hop-in area. Potential sharing of responsibilities at the middle school. I believe we would be in a good spot, maybe with some additional hours to handle the middle school. Willow would bump up against our concern of someone being stationed away from that high traffic area would be a loss to Willow with the movement of the security portion down on the first floor. So it's a tough discussion to have, but we wanted to make sure that the board knew kind of where we were. I'm more confident in the middle school, less confident at Willow, but I also feel that there's a loss at COH and Willow with regards to the reduction of early intervention support there.
Can I just ask, will the greeter and the security be in that new security office? So at Willow,
Just one would be.
one, and then the other would be positioned at, because typically the security is around out at recess, goes out when the kids go out for gym. So then it would just be the greeter in that office and the top would be empty.
Correct.
So if I could get further clarification on the early intervention, what age level is this for? Is this for the kindergarten? You're saying there is a kindergarten and this is additional for first grade?
This would be more targeted towards first grade.
Okay. But if this position isn't filled, there still would be that position for kindergarten?
Correct.
Shared across COH and Willow?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're fully understanding our options here, so. Christina?
Is that currently, is there one person splitting that first grade duty? And this would, I know you just explained it, but I'm trying to track. They're splitting it, and this would give us one in each building, or this is to maintain splitting it?
This is to lighten the give from COH and Willow. So COH has a full-time early intervention teacher that is now moving potentially into a classroom. Willow has the same 1.0 that would be moving into a classroom. So between the two buildings, they're down 2 FTEs. This would at least give them a 1.0 back to at least share between the two.
Thank you. And the 2.0 safety monitors, that cost is for 2 people. So and the concern is at Willow that would be adjusted if we're just talking about one person.
Correct. So there would need to be some sharing of responsibilities. We would also look at potential increasing hours for some existing personnel, like monitors and things of that nature. So I want to say confidently, we can figure it out. There's not going to be an unsafe situation at Willow, like I spoke about last time. We can be creative, but I wanted to be transparent with my conversations with the principals and kind of what they said would have to occur. The concern at Willow would be the need for someone stationed there all the time, because that bell rings all the time. So you need someone there with the eyes on the door nonstop. So even if the sheriff would move down to relieve our security personnel, it would just need to be a well thought out rotation of responsibilities.
Great, thank you, Terry. So if I can just, recap here for the public and for our board, at our last meeting, we discussed several positions and went through and had sort of an up and down vote. The administration has come back here with this line in yellow saying perhaps we should consider changing what we did last time and voting in favor of those safety monitors and flipping that to an early intervention support teacher, that would be the administration's recommendation. So I think we need to have a discussion between those two options here as a board, and then a discussion on the next page in terms of the funding options A, B, and C. Tiffany.
So I don't want to speak too long, and I don't want to belabor a point because I'm going to be discussing it in the next agenda item. But for those of you who are not aware of my background, I'm a certified police academy instructor and have taught the juvenile instruction course at the Orange County Police Academy several times. I'm a former assistant district attorney and a former chief assistant county attorney in charge of family law and juvenile justice. I have personally prosecuted school threat cases, which will be in our next agenda item, but I preface it by not bolstering myself, but for you to understand my background and why safety monitors are so essential to our student safety. And not taking anything away from early intervention, I truly believe that's important as well. I have a cousin who was involved in the Parkland shooting, was in the school building when it occurred, and I'm telling you, the trauma, the anxiety, and the lifelong impact that has on your child, I can't even begin to describe it, but just put yourself, instead of just reading the line that says safety monitor or early intervention, again, I agree that's important. Put yourself in the god-awful position of your child being a victim or being a participant in any one of those scenarios. It's life-altering forever. So I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm simply pointing it out, and I will personally, my sole vote will not waver or move off of the school safety monitors.
Can I ask a question to just
Yeah, please.
clarify something? I was at Willow. I know how important that is, and especially now not having someone in that main lobby. But can you just clarify, what is the difference between the police officer that's in there, a safety monitor, or a regular monitor? So right now at Willow, we had the officer, and then we had the greeter, we called her. So what exactly is would the greeter who's currently there, would she be considered a safety monitor, or what is the difference between those? Sorry.
No, I think that's an important description that needs to be explained. So the importance of the sheriff that the board at the time and the community at the time made was someone armed. So just think of our Orange County sheriffs, that's our armed personnel in each of our schools. Next level is security. So where Willow has someone there, that's part of our security personnel. Safety monitors would be a new position to Cornwall. So we had Dr. Harrington and Mr. Fink kind of wrap their heads around, if we were to have this position, what's out there with civil service. A safety monitor is a civil service position, correct, Dr. Harrington? So it would be a new, unarmed. The greeter is a position specific to the middle school and high school. So that's not security, that's really just a greeter, someone to greet people as they come in, kids, X, Y, or Z. So those are the differences. Willow does not have a greeter. Their security is kind of tied to that area just because of the logistics of the building. Correct.
So the safety monitor would be unarmed.
Correct.
But trained, I'm assuming, in some form. So it's not like having just a regular monitor coming in. Okay.
Right.
And if I can, I'm sorry, Christian.
No, I was just giving you your next point.
Oh, the safety monitor, because I'm not as familiar with Willow, I'm gonna have to take a ride over there. We have an armed person on site. The safety monitor would be in place because the armed person switches their position throughout the day based on the need.
So currently at Willow, there's no security vestibule on the first floor. So you walk up the stairs, you are greeted by Mindy, who's wearing two hats, kind of like a pseudo greeter, but also more importantly, security. So unarmed security is where Mindy sits. Armed Orange County sheriff, I hardly ever see because they're moving. They're moving to the high traffic areas, et cetera. Put a security vestibule down on the first floor of Willow, move Mindy down there, sheriff's moving, the highest traffic area at Willow now has no eyes, or eyes in a rotational manner. So that's the difference is current status is here, move her down here. Sheriff is doing recess and arrival, dismissal. So that main landing, that first floor area is the concern at Willow.
No one gets into that first floor without going past Mindy downstairs.
Correct.
Okay.
Right,
Correct.
yeah, is that new vestibule open at Willow? I haven't.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's
when
anywhere.
they open that new vestibule, I assume that the current front door will be locked. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like people can just walk in
Correct.
there. Yeah,
Correct.
you will have to go through. So the security, even if this position, obviously adding this position will improve security posture, but even absent adding this position, there will be an improvement over today when that new security office, which is taking part of the current nurse's office, is built. That will increase the security having that dedicated greeting office rather than just a pedestal out in the hallway.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Jim brings up a really good point. The vestibule by itself enhances security at Willow because the concern at Willow with the current state is you could hit the door and then there is a down staircase when you enter, so that eyes on and up. So there's numerous ways that you can go. So this moving the vestibule to a different door, having that be the access going right past through security is an improvement.
Thank you. Christian.
And if you don't mind, Terry, just to answer Christine a little, I was in the building and that armed security guard goes out with the students. So I would take my students out for their snack. He was out there with us. You know, you were never, he was always visible. So he's not standing in that hallway. He is, yeah, all over.
Yeah. Christian, the floor is yours.
Well, I mean, I know we've been building up to this moment, but I guess three things. The first one is my initial was for the EL teacher at the high school. As in the previous discussion, I threw my support behind the 2 safety monitors, but I would say right now I'm willing to accept the administrative recommendation to replace that slot with the early intervention teacher. So I'm just noting that. Secondly, I just have a technical question because I believe the early intervention teacher was at 133,252, and I'm just interested in what changed, you know, since that's also like salary plus benefits. Why are we changing the calculation of that? And I just really would like to know the details. And then third, given the public comment tonight, I think before we go on and talk about how we're going to pay for it in terms of fund balance versus tax levy, I think we need to talk about the additional 10 UPK seats again. And so I just want to make sure that the discussion happens before we move on to the next stage. And I'm not going to comment on that, but I think those are 3 short points.
Yeah, so I could answer the question about the staffing change for the 1.0 FTE. When we originally gave a cost estimate for that, it's roughly $133,000. So this would be a difference of roughly $5,000 at 128. That would just mean the difference of probably a step or two, because we try and build in where we can anticipate hiring somebody at a step. So we would further limit ourselves on a step on the replacement of that individual.
So just to follow on that, I assumed it was something of that sort. So what is the step we assumed at the 133,252, and what is the step we're assuming now with the 128,740?
I think we assume about a step 8 when we try and do a hire to give ourselves some wiggle room. If we were to look at this, we're going to look at probably step 5, if I had to guess. I'm not positive.
And the confidence there, I debated this with Mr. Fink. This was my call. I was like, do we split the difference and go 131? At the end of the day, the closer we get to identifying the actual person that would be in the position, the more confident we are with the salary number. So to Christian's point earlier, when you're talking about an E&L position at the high school, early intervention teacher at the middle school, a counselor, all of those things, you have to come up with an estimate across the whole district. This, we're pretty confident that it's going to step down from the 133, so to keep things really simple for discussion, it would be an even swap that we would feel confident that we would be able to hit our budget adopted by the board.
We also don't know, health insurance. We assume a family plan, they could take an individual or a two-person plan, which would be a savings. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, not a lot, for us to be comfortable.
Okay, so sorry, Christian, I just want to revisit. You had 3 points, UPK, this position, and sorry, what was your third?
I just kind of said, look, I'm willing to accept the administrative suggestion of swapping the safety
Right, so
monitor
that was
slot.
one, UPK, and what was
UPK,
your?
that we have that discussion before we move on to the next, how we're funding this exactly. And then the third point was I just asked the discussion we just had now about the difference between what was stated before and what the number that's there now.
So I guess here's what exact for as far as UPK. I guess I'm looking a little more clarity on what you want to discuss. Are you saying that you want to reopen the discussion, the decision we made last time for 10 seats?
I would like to reopen the discussion and to reconsider 20 seats and see where the support is, given that we've heard several members of the public, and I have my own numbers on what that would work out to by adding the 20 seats, and I think we would still stay within the tax levy cap. And so that I would like to have the discussion because obviously that's going to impact the total amount that we're proposing, whether we are doing it from fund balance or whether we are doing it from tax levy.
Understood. So let's, unless anybody else has any questions, comments, clarification, Bass and then Tiffany.
Yeah, my comments are kind of related to this exact slide we're looking at. I want to reiterate what my position was during our last meeting. All the items on the wish list are good items. I mean, you can argue for each one of them why it is needed. However, the problem we're facing is the economic situation everybody is living. I'm a constituent, I represent constituents out there. I can tell you that when I renewed my taxes like 2 weeks ago, my insurances 2 weeks ago, we have 3 cars, we have a house, everything went up 50%. My agent tried to shop around for a better, provider, insurance company. She couldn't find any. She said, Bass, that's what we have. The last thing I want to do this year is to ask our constituents to pay more on their property taxes. I cannot argue that any one of those lines is not important, right? You want to swap them, you want to go back to the wish list and take 1 or 2 or 3 or all 5 or 6, how many are we going to 5? And bring another 5 lines from the wish list. I remember it was like page full. You can do that and you can still argue for it. My position is this year, 1, no added items from the wish list, not these 5, not the rest of them. I'd like to cap the tax levy increase at 1.9%, not 2.0. I don't want to everybody think that, the taxes went up by 2%. 1.9, psychologically, it's not 2, it's 1.9. So here we're looking at the next page at 2.5 and 2.9 and 2.7. Let's cap it as just 1.9. And obviously, if you do that, you have to make up that deficit. That deficit would go to the appropriated or assigned, whatever you want to call them, appropriated or assigned fund balance. That's my position. I'm not going to change it. So I said that last week. I'm saying it tonight. I'm going to say it in 2 more meetings to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Bass. Tiffany.
I'm similarly situated as Bass. As we look at our slide, the levy and approval rating history data.
Can I ask that we tackle this slide? And
I am. It's part and parcel.
Okay.
We look at it as 1.66% over a 10-year average. Bass is proposing we don't go above 1.9. Over 10 years, that would still be 1/4% higher. It's now being proposed that the minimum, the lowest, is 2.5, slightly lower than a full percentage point in your taxes. And if anybody has looked at your retirements lately, they're not looking too good. We're getting hit very hard economically. How it's related to the particular slide that we were just on, I'm fully in agreement that every item on the wish list can be argued as very important, but we need to make hard decisions. One of the hard decisions that I chose to vote for last meeting, when it was very clearly spelled out exactly how much more it would cost and how we could add an additional 10 seats to UPK, because I doubt anybody sitting at this table is opposed to UPK. I would hope not anyway. It's a matter of how we can get the seats, how we can fund it, etc. I, too, am not going to change my position. I am a hard no on 2.5%, and I'm a hard no on any other wish list items other than the additional 10 seats for UPK or the safety monitors.
Jim? Just clarification, and this is really a question for Mr. Fink. Can you just distinguish that the tax levy increase is not a tax rate and the difference between the two? That the percentage increase is not the increase in your taxes per se, it's the increase in how much is levied and how that is then allocated to individual households.
Then distributed amongst the households based on the equalization rates, based on your market value of your homes. That's correct. So you pay a different share. We have Cornwall, New Windsor, and a little piece of Woodbury, correct, in our tax.
So can I just restate, and you can, if I'm understanding, that it does not mean that everyone's property taxes will go up 2.5%. It will go up, I'm just saying, the point is, it might go up that, it might not go up that, it depends upon, as you said, the distribution
a number of different factors. There's exemptions that come into play, that come and go, that certain exemptions will exist for certain people, and certain people will not get exemptions. So yes, there are a number of different factors that are calculated into that. So when somebody goes and looks at their tax bill, it may not go up by 2.5%. It may go up more. It may go up less. It depends on the factors in that community that the person lives in, equalization rates, things like that.
Brendan.
Thank you.
Yeah, just before, I feel like we're about to talk about other things. So at first about to Tiffany and Bass's point, I think we all agree that this is a challenging environment to be doing anything in terms of raising money or raising the cost to taxpayers. I think certainly I feel it. I think we all in this room feel it. However, I think it is true, and we have to recognize that everything is getting more expensive for everyone, including ourselves. We're not just spending money. We're not just collecting money, we're spending it, and it's getting more expensive for us to spend it, just like it is for anybody else. And in a world where everything is getting more expensive, I'm a little uncomfortable saying that like the buck has to stop at schools or at kids. We don't say, well, I'm going to go without food, or I'm going to go without insurance, for instance. These are things we know we have to purchase, so we do, and we pay what people ask. So for us to say, but this is the one area where we're going to try to skimp. I know that I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth and characterize, but if this was just a case of us adding, I would tend to agree with you. But as has been pointed out last meeting, and Terry provided clarity on this, we're losing 2 positions, replacing it with 1. So we're still coming out less. We're just trying to meet inflation in the middle, so to speak. Now, to try to get to some of those more palatable positions, I'm going to go back to the well. If we're going back to the well a little bit, I would say to the safety monitors, it seems as though the Willow one is more strategically significant than the middle school. So I don't want to throw too much uncertainty into like what we've got in front of us, but there is a world where we add one of those. take the administrative recommendation for the early intervention support teacher and then lose the strategic plan, in which case we're only $20,000 over what we have in front of us, which could be absorbed through a small bump to the tax levy, a small bump to the assigned fund balance. But I mean, if we're looking at a straight up safety monitor versus strategic plan, I know how I would vote on that, but I think that's another possibility we could entertain as a board. And as far as the UPK seats go, I would be interested. I mean, for me, the decision to land on 10 was always about calculating where our need was going to be. You know, we're always trying to figure out at this point of the budget process what's the waiting list going to look like, you know, in a few weeks, and both of those things are moving at the same time. So if my only suggestion for that part of the discussion is if we can get further clarity on, you know, would the 20 seats even be used? To what level of certainty do we have, you know, that they would be used? And yeah, I think that would help us make a more informed decision about that.
Eleanor?
Much to what Brendan just said, I just feel I have to speak up as an educator. We are talking about educating our students here, and yes, it is a very difficult economic time right now, and I completely understand that. But when you moved to Cornwall, you also understood that we don't have any big businesses here to offset the taxes to provide for the schools. And I don't think we can shortchange our students for 0.5%. And as John just said, not everyone's tax rate will go up at the same amount. But the bottom line is that, yes, we are, as Bass said, here representing the constituents and trying to keep the taxes down. But we are also here for the students. We are here to do what is best for our schools, for our classrooms, for our teachers. And so we need to keep that in mind when we're making these decisions.
Can I just?
Yes.
Leonora, I agree with what you said. Yeah, I mean, this is the balance that, as a board member, I have in mind that I have to keep at all times. I mean, I represent students, I represent teachers, I represent employees, and I represent the constituents. So you have to balance these things. Now, the fact that we are still living in the aftermath of 4 years of economic challenges, right? We're still living in it. What I'm saying is, my position is this year is not the time to do this. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying like next year, no, I'm gonna keep my opposition to that. I'm saying that this year, we don't have the luxury to provide this list. As I said, I mean, I see 5 lines here. Last meeting, we had a page that has like 10 or 15. I can argue for every single line of them. Every single line of them is very important, but not this year.
But every year, there will be something. Every year, there is going to be a reason not to add something to the budget or the economy. There's always going to be something. We have to strike a balance here. You know, and the foundation is formed at those early years. So the UPK seats, the early intervention at the early years really offsets those later years because you're building a foundation for those students.
Thank you. So, yeah, I think you both have made your points, and that, you know, we're not trying to get into a back and forth debate here. I think we all understand these are difficult decisions that we're making right now, and we're going to have some differing opinions, and I'm glad that you both stated them. Christian.
I mean, this is not to go back and relitigate past decisions, but it's also important to understand how we got here. Let's say we made a simple decision not to do the high school AV system through the fund balance, and instead we did it to the tax levy, which most certainly would have passed given the support. Let's say we just made that simple decision. We would have enough money in this budget to pay for the UPK seats and for the safety monitor. And our failure to do that is why we are in this tough situation today. And our failure to do it now will be the reason why we will not be able to afford something else in the future. And I just bring up the AV system because that was a one-time, and as I said last year in the same discussion, that would then fall away because it's a one-time cost. We would have been able to expand our tax levy and have the fiscal space to do something that it seems that we all agree is important. And the reason why the tax levy is going up is in part because of how low the tax levy was kept over the last 5 or 6 years. And the point about it is costs increase. And we voted for drivers, whether it's our bus contract, our teachers' contract, the contract given to administrators in this district, which increased much more than the tax levy. So inevitably that was going to push something else out that was probably closer to where the students are. And not saying that those things are unimportant or that we shouldn't do that, but you have to understand that at some point, and I said this last year, and for this reason, we don't know what the economic situations are going to be in the future. No one knows the future. As Yogi Berra said, prediction is difficult, especially about the future. But the point about it is we can put ourselves in a situation where we're better able to handle whatever the future might be. And I do think that this is a need that we have now. These 4-year-olds will not have a chance to be in UPK again. And the total cost of those 10 extra seats beyond what we've already authorized is only $35,670. And distributed among every single household in the district, that is not going to change anyone's, well, I shouldn't say that. Let me not say anyone's budget, but it's probably not going to make a significant change. It's like how many, as I said last year, it's like the price of like a Starbucks coffee once a month for 12 months, and that's the difference. And I think we have a community that is generous and supports education enough to do that. And there are many people given the reasons why UPK is good down the road, because the other loss is like the loss in learning, the loss in the skill development, the additional problems we'll have in the upper grades for these students probably, and that will be an additional cost even above what we're not spending on, that we will have to allocate money, or future boards will have to allocate money. So I think for that small difference, and I'll just say this, I know that I pay more school tax than more than half the people on this board. In fact, I know I pay more school tax than 3 board members combined. And I lived, before I had children, I think 23 years where I lived in relatively high property tax jurisdictions for the most part, and paid school taxes happily. And after my children are no longer in the schools, and if I live to my actuarial, life expectancy, I know that I'm going to be in Cornwall because I've set up my finances to do that, and I will happily pay for other people's children because that's my value. That's the value I put on education. And the question is, I decide to sacrifice elsewhere, and I think a lot of other people, because it is not the parents of the students who pay most of their children's cost of their child's education. I think the average spending per pupil in this district is roughly around $23,000, $24,000. Very few people pay that amount in school tax. And I think I think this is worth it, and I'm still going to advocate for it, and I think we should consider whether we still think that 10 or 20 seats is the appropriate amount. And we can talk about fund balance, which would bring the tax levy amount down to a certain amount, but if we do that, we're then not increasing our fiscal capacity going forward, and I think that would be another lost opportunity.
Okay, so just give me 1 second here, and then we're gonna take some action here.
Can you just remind me the fund balance? I just want to have some context. Remind me, please. If we use a part of that, what will be remaining? Am I not asking that correctly?
I'm trying to follow how
So
you're asking it.
It's not the 3 scenarios. It was some portion of the fund balance would be used. If we use a portion, what do we have? Is it $5 million in that? So we're going to be using half of it. I'm trying to remember.
We won't know until later on in the year. But when you're assigning fund balance, what we talked about in the last meeting, I think in the meeting before as well, is just kind of creating that hole in your succeeding budgets, okay? Because you're relying on the credit card, I think we talked about, of our own. You know, it's like that Cornwall American Express, right? You got to make sure
I'm
you
not
pay that
advocating
back.
for it. I just want to understand.
So you
and I know it's an estimate, but
we had some wiggle room, right? The board has been consistent with about $2.5 million. We were recommending 2.3 to be a little bit lower. You know, these scenarios present kind of around that range for the board in order to, you know, work with the levy, offset the levy, and move forward. So, you know, what
so
we
it
have
puts
total.
us to zero then. Like that's what I'm just.
Christine, can I
Yeah,
jump in? Because I think I
please,
know
yeah.
from what
Thank
perspective
you
you're
for
asking me.
translating.
So the fund balance is basically the amount that we have left over at the end of the year. So if we say we're going to use 2.5 of that, we're making a bet that we're going to find the same amount of savings in the following year, because we're going to need that money in case needs come up. So you never want to be at zero.
So
right?
that's
like, we're
typically
kind
what
of-
we find year over year.
More or less.
Roughly.
More or less, yeah.
Okay, that's what I
So,
wanted
but that's
to.
what John's saying. Like, we want to bring it down so that we're not rolling the dice to that. We're not leveraging ourselves that much.
Yeah, it's a
every year.
risk. I mean, it's yeah.
John, tell me if I'm
I think
wrong.
it's a great way to look at it. I struggle. Every business official struggles with describing fund balance, and that's why
I'm
like
just
I had
as
the
ignorant as
silos.
Christine. I'm just a little bit more experienced, so I know how to translate what you're saying.
It's just a difficult concept for a lot of people to. Yeah.
Trends to predict.
Okay. So we're going to circle back to UPK. I'm going to table that for right now. Here's what I want people to vote right now. I'm going to say A, B, and C. So I'm going to say the A plan. Nope. I'm making my own A, B, and C on the last slide. Could you go back to the last slide? So my A plan is the Brendan plan. Ditch the strategic plan. 1 safety monitor at Willow. And yes to the early intervention at COH.
You're going to have a seat so I can take some notes if you don't mind.
So that's the A plan.
Can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
But does that still include the and the
Yes.
increase?
Yes. So the A plan, the Brendan plan, no strategic plan, 1 safety monitor to be placed at Willow, yes to the early intervention, yes to UPK 10, yes to substitute teachers. All 3 plans are yes to UPK 10 and yes to the certified teacher pay, because there's been no debate there. So that's the Brendan plan. That's choice A. Choice B is just what's in yellow. So yes to the strategic plan, no to the safety monitors, yes to the early intervention teacher. And then choice C is everything in white. So what we agreed to last time. Yep. So B is the early intervention as opposed to the safety monitors, and C is the safety monitors as opposed to the early intervention.
Jim, if I may, I would say A is the Brendan plan.
Yep.
B is the admin plan.
The yellow
meaning
plan.
Their suggestion. And
Yep.
C was board plan.
From last meeting.
From last meeting.
Yes.
And just so I think that's the best way to summarize, and if that's correct from what you're saying.
Yes.
Jim, can you do me a favor and give me that A one more time, please?
No strategic planning, 1.0 safety monitor at Willow as opposed to 2.0 safety monitors, and yes to the early intervention support teacher, the split between COH and Willow. What's that?
How does the administration, like, if Terry had his pick, I'm just curious.
Yeah. The admin plan is
Has
big.
that changed based on our discussion, or is that still?
Yellow instead of the second line.
No.
No, I like all 3 options. Our team would fully support.
Okay, I just we didn't ask
Okay.
last time, so I want.
So, Christian, Brendan plan, admin plan, or BOE last meeting plan?
B admin plan.
Richard?
For now, B.
Carl?
What's the question there, buddy? I'm looking at the safety monitors, A.
So you're looking at choice C, what we
C.
agreed upon at the last meeting.
Well, let's be clear. A does have a safety.
A has one safety monitor.
Okay.
One safety monitor or two.
I mean, basically, if I can rephrase, I've been branded with the A plan. So, A versus B is strategic plan or safety monitor. Like that's
Willow.
That's
Yes.
the choice. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going with C, correct? Safety monitors. Doing good so far? The administrative recommendation, that's the C? No.
C.
B, there we go. B, there we go. And the universal pre-K program.
Well, we're coming back.
We're coming back.
So-
All right.
So what you're picking with B is all of this, just so you understand, it's not like that.
Yeah,
You're not
that's
at a
me.
buffet, you're not picking like one
Right.
from here and two
Right,
from there.
okay.
I'm B.
So sorry,
I believe he's B.
Yeah, I'm B. Trust me, I'm B.
You're reducing you're getting, B is eliminating safety.
B has no safety monitors.
Oh, no. Safety monitors is the first thing I want up there.
Okay, you want two safety monitors.
Yes,
So you're C.
yes.
Okay. Will Brendan vote for the Brendan plan?
I was confused with B, sorry. I thought B had safety monitors.
No.
So I'm gonna go with C, which was our original plan. Can we add?
Yes.
But can we add the teacher? Is there one where I can get all of it?
Yes.
Plan A.
I want it, can
A.
we?
All right. So look. A.
So we're gonna do a D then?
A. No, I think that busts.
I don't feel so bad.
Back of the envelope. I think that busts the money.
Okay.
So A ditches the district plan, the strategic plan. You get
And leaves the rest of it in place?
except you get one safety monitor at Willow.
But I want two.
All right, well, that's what you want.
But where's the second one going?
At the
What?
middle school, right? Wasn't it middle school and Willow? Okay, then let me, I don't care if we get away, if we don't go with the strategic plan, but I want the rest of it. So which one is that, A, B, C, or D? The closest is A with one safety monitor?
Yes.
And then it keeps the teacher,
Yes.
the UP, okay, then I'm gonna do A.
Okay.
The Brendan plan.
The more
Bren-
you hear
Should've
about
just
it,
said the Brendan
the more you hear
plan.
about it, the more you like it.
Will Brendan vote
yeah,
for the Brendan plan?
I'm for A. I'll call it.
Okay. Tiffany. Bass.
Best plan, none of the above.
Okay. Christine. So I'm B. I've got 3 for B, 3 for A, 2 for C, 2 for not spending money. Or excuse me, 1 for not spending. So, do any of the Bs want to switch to A, which I believe were Christian and, I didn't write names down, Christian and Richard and myself, or do any of the As want to switch to B?
Can I try to convince someone to switch?
Sure.
So for the sake, I am a cheerleader for strategic planning. Like, I geek out on it. I love it. But I think when we are looking at what we're willing to give up, I think we could wait a year. We could do our own strategic planning in a retreat that will get us through the year and directionally get us closer to a long-term plan, and perhaps put that on next year. Or perhaps if we don't use our surplus budget, second half of the year we could find $45,000. But I'm not in favor of keeping that in lieu of something else. I felt pretty confident. What I heard was really what the need is one safety monitor. And that's from feedback back from the buildings. If that's not true, then I want to be corrected. And that the need, again, from feedback from the buildings, is that the early intervention teacher really will make the impact and is seen as a need. And I think that we can, by giving up the strategic plan and going to one safety monitor, rough math is we're looking at maybe like a $30,000 difference to get that early intervention teacher from our first discussion last week. Vote A.
Richard,
Yeah.
was that a button press
Yes.
there?
I'm willing to go to A, but I'm still interested in the UPK discussion. I want to
UPK discussion has not been had yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So, A and that discussion.
So you're switching officially from B to A. Christine's oratory has persuaded you. She is persuasive.
Persuasive enough to?
So Jim, if I may,
You may.
sorry, Christine, I'm gonna push back on, I'm gonna make an argument for B and see if I get any switches. It's in our board goals. Strategic planning is in our board goals for this year. And not that we have to necessarily, that binds us to anything, but that's what we said we were going to do. And I think that we should be consistent with that, because strategic planning, the idea here, and Jim, I think you said it, that save money in the future. And some of the things about strategic planning is thinking about what our revenues need to be over a longer period of time, and also what our needs are going to be over a longer period of time, so that we can allocate that, whether that is safety, whether that is instruction, whether that is any of the worthy things that I think people support for all the right reasons. So on the same time, and that's why that I support B, and it is also not clear to me why the strategic planning has to be part of the budget process. And I think this is also why I don't necessarily understand why subpay is necessarily part of the budget process. We increased subpay, and it was not part of the budget process earlier this year. And we've done other things of that sort where we've made changes, whether for the scoreboard, whether for the survey in previous years. So here's where I kind of look at it, and this is maybe somewhat supporting you, but we are going to look, we don't know, but we are probably likely to have some surplus. That's why we created the capital reserve fund, or we put it onto for the budget vote in May. And I think what we need to do is saying, look, if we have money, one of the first things we spend money on is that fund balance, and we're going to use it toward the strategic plan before we put it into the capital reserve. Now, obviously, this will be a future board. It will not be exactly the same as the 9 of us who are around here today. And I'm willing to do, I think that might be the way to have it, in the sense that you're just essentially using more fund balance, because as I understand it, the strategic planning is a one-time cost, even though there's a part of it that will be recurring as maintaining it, but we're paying for the one-time consultants, advisors to come in and help us devise that strategic plan, and then update, and it's not going to be the same cost every single year going forward. It's not like it's $45,000 every single year.
Right, it's not like a teacher position that's
right.
recurring.
And that's
yes.
And generally, I remember Jim, you and John Edelin saying this last year that the fund balance is for these small one-off costs.
Can be.
As opposed to recurring costs, which we'd rather have in the tax levy, because the tax levy, in a sense, keeps that funding there year after year without paying down the fund balance in an unsustainable way. So that's sort of like how I would see this. So
Sure.
like, I'm willing to have the strategic plan in.
Didn't we already talk about, aren't we already talking about using fund balance for the totality of the budget?
We're asking, is there money this
Right, but
year
I'm
somewhere?
saying, but the fund balance is the fund balance is the fund balance, which essentially carries over year to year, whatever the
Well,
balance
the
is.
next discussion we're going to have is options of
that's
how
what
to
I'm
spend that, yeah.
That's my point. So we're already talking about spending the fund balance.
We will
So
be. It's a matter of
the
how
reason why
much.
it's included in the conversation
So-
is because it's money that's being spent,
But I
potentially from the
think what
fund
he's
balance.
trying to say is that once we use that fund balance, it's gone. When you put it in the tax levy, it's money you're getting every
I
year.
hear him. I'm
right,
simply
but
saying
I'm
we're
just
already
saying
talking
with
about
the
the fund balance.
teacher, you don't really want to take that out of a fund balance, because that's a yearly expense.
course,
Yeah.
but we've
Can I
already
give
been
one
talking about
concrete
that.
example just from last year? Sorry. And no, this is just give an example of what we did last year. So one of the things that was the need assessment was a .2 physical education teacher position, which we did not vote for in the budget. But we did, when money became available, we made that position whole, I believe, in August of this year, in a sense because the money was there, and then we addressed a need, kind of, let's say, in retrospect. Now, we didn't pre-commit to doing that, but that's kind of what we did.
But that, so John, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, because this is a question that I ask pretty much every summer, and I'll probably ask it again this summer, is, hey, we've got this leftover money, let's go spend it right now. And the answer is you can't spend above your budget. You can't take that leftover unassigned fund balance and spend it on a one-time need right then and there. You have to apply it to your capital reserve or your TRS or ERS reserve or your tax certiorari reserve, or, that's my understanding. And I'll probably ask you again this summer and you'll tell me the same thing, but is that?
That's correct. You're going to assign it to your reserves, and you're appropriating for the assigned fund balance here.
Okay.
Well, I would like to understand something, just from my learning. How did we pay for the survey? Because that wasn't in the budget per se, but we found the money. I just want to learn.
So I do want to hit that point because this is an important budget conversation. So anything that we know that is a substantial amount of money needs to be budgeted for. So we need to go in eyes wide open. We're talking about a $45,000 strategic plan. Shame on us to say, if we find the money, we'll do it. It doesn't work that way. So important points brought up all across the board, that things come up all the time, like lawsuits and things of that nature that we don't plan for. We try to plan for as much as we can to budget accordingly. That's why we need some wiggle room to plan throughout the year. So for the example of the PE teacher, or should we have a need for an E&L needs, those are mandates. You are going to meet the needs of our kids, to Eleanor's point. That's what we're here for. So if we get 6 kids moving the district and need special education services, we're not going to the board to say we need this approval. You obviously approved the position, but we're already planning for a 6th period, a .2, things of that nature to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids. So all of that to just say, when we know it, we didn't know about the scoreboard. There was no way for us to plan for that last May. That came about as a discussion by the board. You look to us to find the money, and we reallocate things as needed.
But that was a different discussion anyway, because that was out of a capital spending project. That wasn't part of the annual budget. That was a separate
completely agree.
bucket of money. So
the same thing with the survey. We don't make those decisions. The board directs us to say we want to go this direction. Guess what? We have to go back and look at positions that we haven't filled, supplies that weren't allocated, things of that nature, to find the money. But when we know a substantial cost, we're going to put it in the budget to budget accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
So, as much as I don't like to do this, I'm just, to break this deadlock, I'm going to switch my vote from B to the Brendan plan, because we already have 4 there. So, so just to reiterate, no strategic plan, 1.0 safety monitor to be placed at Willow, early intervention teacher, UPK 10 seats, and substitute teacher. So now we'll talk about UPK 10 versus 20. Terry, there's been some comments about UPK. Anything that you would like to add before we start that discussion?
Just to share what I've shared before, that there's concerns with the notion of UPK for all. There's a lot that would have to occur for that to happen. Again, I just shared the experience last year. 132 applicants. The reason I know it's 132 is because my son was the last ping pong ball picked, so he's number 132 for last year's lottery, and he was eventually reached this year for placement. I chose not to accept it because my child already was in a UPK provider that we love. So my caution is the delta for beyond LT would not fill a 20-person classroom last year. More applicants this year, but to the tune of 12 more applicants. So again, it's just that concern of how did we get to LT's ping pong ball? People moved out of the district. People ultimately declined. We have a registration process where people have to prove residency. Some of those didn't work out. So there's a myriad of reasons why we continue to go down the list. So that's my only caution. I try to update the board on as we move through the process. It's really early now. Right now we've moved about 6 or 7 spots on the wait list, but registration hasn't even closed. Registration closes in mid-May for UPK.
Terry, what happens if, hypothetically, we say yes to 20 seats, but we don't fill them all? What is the risk back to us?
So when this was a really heavy topic 2 years ago, we talked about the promise that we make to our business owners. So they're making internal decisions based on their pricing. There was a comment made about before and after care. We don't pay for before and after care. All of our providers are given a flat fee for 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. They charge, the reason I know, I pay for before and after care at a provider. So we make a promise that you're partnering with us for 18 seats at Sportsplex, 40 seats at Butterhill, et cetera. If we don't fill those seats, we're not fulfilling our promise. So right now it works that a seat becomes available, we go to the wait list, and I send them, the family, an email that you now have a spot at X provider, and we continue to do that. My concern is if they're making decisions and we get to November and a provider now has 3 vacant seats that we can't fill, they've made business decisions based on a promise of 20, and now we're only filling 17. So that's the conversations I've had with providers. That would be my concern if we weren't able to fill all the seats.
Tiffany.
Which is exactly why I had my hand up, was to ask a similar question to Christine. If we could, no, don't apologize. If we could, I'm all for going to 20 UPK seats, but I'm not willing to pay for them if they're not filled. So if we add a provider from what you told us, you reiterated tonight is essentially the same as what you told us at the last meeting, that you don't think you could fill 20 seats at this juncture based upon the numbers and your experience from last year. I'm happy to bring on an additional provider. I'm happy to authorize another 20 seats. I'm not willing to bring on another provider, add 20 seats, have 11 kids instead of the 10, and pay for 20. That I'm not willing to do. And from what I'm hearing and what we heard at the last meeting, that's what we're hearing would happen. And I just don't think that that's fiscally prudent.
Thank you. So I think really the question is, last time we agreed upon UPK 10 versus 20. So if we just want to go around and...
Hey, Jim, can I just ask one clarifying question too? Because I think there's some lack of clarity, and you just mentioned, like how late the calendar goes. I think some people assume that we should know by now, Can you just talk about that, like how long it takes to know? And roughly, when was the last UPK seat awarded for this current school year that we're in? Because again, I think there are many who feel like, well, there's this wait list right now, and if you're still on the wait list, that means we don't have enough seats, and that's not really the case. Can you just explain that, Terry?
So a few factors. Registration closes sometime in May. That's a very important date because you're proving that you're meeting all the requirements: age by birth certificate, proof of residency, X, Y, or Z, to make sure that everything is legit. There's some people who have a contract on a house, things of that nature, and when does that get approved? So those are the moving items. The October date is where I really look at, we have a really solid list. The reason I say that is, unfortunately, over the summer, things happen. People make life choices. That's where we get some movement with moving out of the district. Then to also really paint the full picture, I want to be clear that the number 132 is like the on-time applicants. In that same May to October, we're also having families move in to say, I have a 4-year-old, I missed the lottery, can you add me to the list? And then they go on the end. So there is that growth of the list over time as well. So that October timeframe is where I feel the most confident And the reason I say we start to plow through the list is anyone who has young kids know that you're making decisions months ago on what your child is going to be doing for their schooling. If you're getting into August, I already told LT he's going to this school, he's already played on the playground, he's ready to go. He's met the teacher, and then I'm gonna give him a seat at a different school in September. That's where a lot of families are like, nope, I'm happy where I am, I don't wanna move my child. So that's where there's a slow march through the wait list, and then there's a rapid march through the wait list, because the closer you get to the start of school, the more people are saying, thank you, but no thank you.
Eleonora.
So I just want to clarify, because you did mention, the providers have their business plan, they budget. Are they charging? So if you tell them you're going to give them 18 seats or 20 seats, and you only put in 14, is the school district being charged for those empty 4 seats, or are they now filling them with outside students?
So there's what we're obligated to do, and we're obligated to pay for students of ours that are actually in the seats. What I was talking through is the promise that I make to providers, that we are confident that you will have 40, you will have 20, you will have 18, and you will have 20. That's the promise that we made. So if push came to shove and the board wanted me to just say, if they have 17, you only pay for 17, that's one thing. But we've also tried to say, we want full Cornwall classes. So in the early days, back in the first year, second year, we decided to add 20 late. So we had the decision of, do we split them in providers and things of that nature? And we came together to say we wanted another full Cornwall class. So you can mix students in. We could only pay for 17, but the conversations and the partnerships that I've established have been, when we say you get 18 at Sportsplex, we're gonna make sure that you have 18 Cornwall kids in that classroom.
Okay.
It feels like I feel premature voting, because I would want to know, is there someone out there who would accept 10 students if that's all we have versus 15? I mean, we've heard from the public, we've gotten a lot of correspondence. I feel like that would be prudent to just understand what the option is, because I agree with Tiffany, I don't want to pay for stuff we're not using, but I don't think we know right now what the possibilities are.
Yeah, I can say based on RFPs submitted, we would have providers willing to take 10 or 20 confidently.
But not charge us if we don't fill the 20. That's what I'm.
Yeah, and that's where it gets.
On goodwill, I know,
Right,
but
right.
would they be okay with that, knowing that that's the position they're filling?
Right.
I don't expect you to know, that's my
Right.
point, is I don't know.
It does kind of feel like, and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we did have 20, like a lot of the reason that people turn their seat down is because they get accepted later. So that if you had more, it seems to me that they would be potentially accepted earlier. I'm really dealing in abstracts right now, but because there would have just been more, now I'm like working it through in my head at the same time of like, yeah, Christine, I translated for you before. Can you do the same? I guess I'll turn it into a question than a statement. Would it help us get through the list quicker if we had more seats?
Yeah, and I run the list, so I know this really well. We would run through the list quicker, because if the board, say, approved 20 tonight, I would be contacting 20 families tomorrow to say, not tomorrow, after the vote, but much faster, I would be contacting 20 parents versus 10, and then adding another 10 later would slow down the process. So the sooner I know a number, 2 years ago when the board was in this spot to go from 60 to 80, we added late, I believe, and I sent families a notification to say, pending community vote, here's your options. please know that this is contingent on Cornwall saying yes. If not, I'm revoking kind of the thing, but we were still able to notify parents to start to make those decisions. So yes, more now, we would be able to move through the list faster. I think with the increased numbers, I think we still may be okay. My concern is just, again, adding to the overall deficit that we started with in this conversation.
On this point, I think I'm pretty confident that we would fill 20 seats. Now, do I know that? No, and I don't think anyone else knows that because prediction is hard, especially about the future. I know that a few years ago there was a fill projection parameter that was cited in deciding how many seats we could fill, and by that parameter we would easily fill the 20 seats with I think the initial wait list was 47, or am I wrong about that? Was that correct when we first, the number of people who registered on time? And I think given that the vocalness of people in our community, we've all gotten the communications about people who want these seats. As someone like you, Mr. Dade, I have children of this age, and I think you know what it's like is that there are very few seats out there and you take whatever you can get because the worst thing is to be not having anything and being kind of, let's say, without a seat at the end. And I've been in that situation because my wife is a civilian at West Point and uniformed military gets priority. We were bumped in the middle of the year and it was impossible to find a seat, or not possible. It took a lot of effort going everywhere to find that one seat, and that's why people will take seats if they're sitting on the waiting list, because they can wait, or they can say, hey, I'm going to bite the bullet and pay for something because of the certainty. And I think what we are doing by allocating the extra 10 seats is making it more affordable for 10 children, if not 10 families. And I think most likely the ones who are going to take that are the ones who are making the decision whether they're going to have daycare or whether they're going to provide it themselves because they can't afford it at all. And I think that is a worthy thing. I've talked about some of the other advantages in UPK in general, in terms of the return on investment, in terms on the things that we'll probably save on the long term. And that's why I've been an advocate for this. So at the cost of an extra $35,670, and I think there are providers who are willing to step up and who seem to want these seats, which means that I think they would be happy to have 9 more seats than they were going to have before, even if they don't get the full 10. And I'm not a provider, but like my conversations with them would suggest that there's not one, but more than one provider in our community that would happily take that offer if we were to offer them, and they would not feel that they were taken advantage of if they only got 9 of those seats filled out of 10 or 5 of those seats out of 10. And I'm sure they would find there are bottlenecks, and I'm not saying the logistics are easy, but I think what we do as a board is we provide the resources. And I think if we don't provide the resources, it's not going to happen. And that's why I am in favor of supporting 20 seats and putting those resources to work. And look, let's say we only fill 5 of the 10 extra seats. At the rate is like $3,500 a seat roughly, I'm approximating. So let's say we were short, and so roughly about $17,000 isn't spent. I can talk about a lot of things where we allocated that amount of money or made a choice to pay someone more. The difference between a teacher with a higher step or not, and it was less than that amount of money. And so the point is that in a large budget, I don't think that's a large loss, and it's money not spent, and eventually it'll go back for us from the taxpayer standpoint if it doesn't get spent. Some of it will go back to the state, perhaps. We're saying what's going to happen to that if those seats aren't there. So I'm not sure who would feel cheated if we didn't fill every single seat. I don't think the providers would necessarily complain. I'm not sure it would be a large sum of money that any taxpayer would notice individually. We're talking about things that are literally in the single dollars per taxpayer for that difference. And so I'm not sure why that's a major reason why we won't do it if we, in a sense, like the idea of UPK in the abstract, which means we think this is a good thing and we would recommend it to any child who, we cared about to say this is an opportunity you should take advantage of. Now, we can't force parents to do that, and different parents make different decisions for their children. But I think that the advantage for our district is significant, and I think that it's worth doing now.
Okay, so it's time for action. Christian's down for 20. And just to remind everyone that the Brendan plan has raised an additional $19,370 over top of the $216,702 by my math, just a reminder of that. Christian's on board for 20. Richard? Carl?
10.
Eleonora?
20.
Brendan?
I'll go 20. That just to add, to continue your thought, that this would add 55,000 over what we see in front of us. So,
In total?
No, that's all included. That's all included.
Tiffany?
I can't do a blanket 20. I need to be assured that we're not paying for seats we're not using. I'm in favor of 20 if we can fill 20. Not in favor of paying for 20 if we can only fill 11.
So 10.
Not really.
We've had the discussion and we've heard it, and Terry is unsure that we can fill 20.
Christine made the point of it's a premature vote, and that she would like more information to see what the numbers actually come to be, and if there are providers who would be willing to say, hey, if we can give you 17, can we pay for 17?
But you don't get the numbers until after the budget is approved by us and
Terry
voted
certainly
on for
could
the-
have that information from the providers, though, before that, and or any potential new providers. That's just, so I'm 20 contingent.
Bass?
0.
Christine?
I'm with Tiffany, and I will just say to Christian's point, I know it's not a huge amount of money, but we are looking at every dollar, and so there are people who don't think we should spend as much money on this. So I want to be fair that I only want to pay for what we're using. So I am in favor of 20 if we find a provider who will work with us in terms of the pay. And I know we need to know that before we have the final budget vote, and I don't know, Terry, if that's possible to get a feel from somebody. You know, I don't have all the data. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to, again, just provide context to Brendan's question because I'm thinking of it a little bit differently. The lottery is run for parents. They start to know who the providers are back in January. So they submit a ranked list, 1, 2, 3, 4. I contact them based on preferences on their list. The uncertainty that I have and I will continue to have is everyone remaining on the wait list is going to be given one provider to choose from. So think of you as a family. If we had one provider in Cornwall, you're making a decision, do I want my child to go to that provider or to a provider of my choice? That's what makes this really difficult when it's later in the budget conversation. So to be crystal clear, the reason why the numbers accelerate with decline is all of those families who may have been thinking of the 4 providers that I have on their ranked sheet, I'm saying those are filled. I'm presenting to you option number 5, take it or leave it. So that's the uncertainty where you're crunching all those numbers. If you said we had 144 plugging in their 1 through 4 or 5 choices, that looks very different than going back to a list saying, Dade family, take this provider or not. You start to get many more declines based on just sheer lack of options.
How many are on the wait list right now?
We are on number 145. 145 total. We've moved 7 slots, so we're on 107, 37 remaining.
Hey, Jim, I'd have to support what Tiffany and I believe it was Brendan was saying before. If we have 20 people coming in there, okay, that's fine. But if we're paying for 20 and we have only 10 in there or 15 in there, I wouldn't support that. But in the meantime, I will change my vote to I will support the 20.
Okay, so that is the 5th vote for 20. So we will add that on there. We will go, if you could flip us to the next slide. And I don't know if you just want to, you already presented it? Oh, it's already up there. I don't know if you've done this math already, John. So that, to Brendan's point, we've now increased $55,040 above what's on this slide. On a percentage basis, that's not a full 0.1, is it? That's going to be a 0.05 or something.
Probably.
Yeah. Any questions here? Does everybody understand our option A, which is a tax levy increase of 2.5 and a fund balance using 2.569 of the fund balance? Option B, tax levy of 2.9 using assigned fund balance of $2,356,000. Or option C, tax levy of 2.7 using an assigned fund balance of $2,467,000. I guess for argument's sake, for option B, we would put, I don't know, where do we want to put that 55,000, John? Put it to the fund balance for all three, so we're comparing apples to apples.
You can follow suit with each of the options. You know, you could add the 55,000 to the fund balance in option A, load
Right.
it all there. You could add it to the tax levy. You're probably going to change
In
by
B, yeah.
0.1, something like that. So you'll be at 2.92 roughly, just speaking out loud. Or if you did the option C and split it, the impact would be negligible on either one of those.
Jim,
Okay,
Jim?
that's a smart way to do it, yes.
Just because I think I've done the calculations, and maybe this would be helpful, just thinking in tax levy terms,
Yes.
assuming full tax levy, and then we can decide if we want to reduce that by attributing more fund balance. I have what was with 20 seats, that would come to 3.01, between 3.01 and 3.02 tax levy. With 20 seats, minus the strategic plan, plus the early intervention teacher, plus one security, and then everything else that was agreed to. So just, I mean, not to say we're voting for that, but just so that's the full in number if we were to go full in tax levy. And then I think that might be a good starting point to think about whether we want to reduce the tax levy by allocating more fund balance. So
What's
like,
that number?
so like the full,
No, I know, but was it 3 point, what did you say?
it's between 3.01 and 3.02.
And that assumes
and
how
that's-
much contribution with the fund balance?
No, so this is basically the entire, everything is tax levy. So this, if you look at option B, it's 2.91 full tax levy. So take that 2.91, now it's 3.01
Okay, so that's
or
not
3.0.
full tax levy, that's still with the 2.35.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
So, but you're adding, we're only adding 55,000
Yeah, that can't
to what's
be
on the
right.
previous page. You're too high at 3.01.
No.
It's more like,
Yeah, it's definitely, that's too high. It
yeah,
would just be-
it's more like 2.95 off the top of my head. It's not a 3.01 because we're only adding on the previous page 55,000.
But Christian's not including the fund balance in his number, I don't think.
Well, yes, you have. I mean,
If you
there's-
didn't
there's
include
no-
any fund balance, it would be like 6 or 7%.
Yeah, there's no budget here
Yeah,
that includes
I'm-
no fund balance.
The 2.356,711 million. That's basically option B with more items in it because of what we've talked about. Anyway, so if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to confuse it, and we can move on. And
No, but I think that's what John presented. I think your math is just a little off. If we take the additional, so we just agreed to 55,000 and change on top of the last page. So the last page has right here 216.
So
we
55,000
agreed to 55,000 on top of that. If you add 55,000 to option B, it's going to take that tax levy. It's like 2.95.
So
It's not going to be.
55,000 is about 0.11 of a tax levy point. 2.91 plus 0.11 is where you get to 3.02. Think about it. A tax levy point is 524,700 and, sorry, 524,000 and, I'm sorry, I don't have the full number, but that, if you want to round it, so if you think about that, roughly, what is 1/10 of a percent is about $5,200. And so if you add 55,000 divided by 5,200, roughly, it's basically a 0.1% increase from that base, and that would get you in the same range.
So it's 292.
No. It would be point one. So, I mean, the shorthand that I've always used is 500,000 is a full point, not a 0.1, a 1.0. So that always changes each year because it's a percentage of the budget as a whole, and as the whole gets bigger, the percentages get bigger. But what Christian is saying is roughly right. I mean, if 500,000 is 1 point, then 10% of that is 0.1.
The tax levy last year was 52 million, and that's where I'm getting the 524,000 is 1%. So 1% of whatever the tax levy was last year is a 1% increase.
Yeah, no, I got you.
So that's why I think my number is actually right.
It may be. I don't have it in front of me. It's getting late. So here's what we'll do. Option A, we will put the 55,000 to fund balance. Option, leaving it at 2.5. Option B, we will put the 55,000 to tax levy, raising that. We'll just say 3.0 for argument's sake. Option C, we'll split the difference because option C is to split the difference. So we'll go to 2.75 and 25,000 other fund balance. Everybody clear?
Can I ask John a question before we vote on this? So the fund balance, we have about 5 million in there right now?
Not right now. I mean, I don't know what, we haven't done the calculation right
Okay,
now.
so
It's too
what is the
early.
cap on a fund balance? Like, how much can you have
You
in
can
there?
have 4% of your budget allowable to carry over for your
Okay.
unassigned fund balance. So we have 4% of our budget right now.
Okay, so
for
what
fund-
would happen if, let's say, we end up with $8.5 million in there, and that's over? What happens to that?
That goes to your reserves.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up, maybe that's why we're creating the new capital reserve, because we have a full, more or less full fund balance. We have the 4%. We have a full capital reserve. There isn't an obvious place to put the money. Like, for example, last year it was around $2 million that we allocated to the capital reserve. So the point is that's why we're creating the capital reserve, because we need a place to be able to put that money. Otherwise, we would be mandated to return it in the following budget, I believe, to reduce the tax levy in the following year. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, you have your 4% unassigned fund balance, and then you could put your additional money in any of your other reserves. The board chose to put the majority of that into that capital reserve to fully fund that capital reserve. We're opening up a new capital reserve to provide us with another option to put additional money in that reserve. We can still load any of the other reserves as well. It's just a combination of those reserves.
Okay. We'll go opposite way that we went last time. Tiffany, A, B, or C?
None.
Okay. Bass?
None.
Christian?
Option B.
Option what?
The B.
B. Okay. Thank you. I misheard you. Richard?
C.
Carl?
C.
Eleonora?
A.
Brendan?
C.
Christine?
C.
I'm also C, so that is 5 for C, split the difference. Thank you, everybody. That completes our budget discussion for the evening and lays us out for
I'm
next
sorry,
meeting.
I just have one more question for John. So I'm looking at the calendar, and we are voting to approve or not approve the budget on the 24th, correct? The board is.
So, correct. Based on
Okay.
what was just discussed now, that's how
Okay.
the budget will be built and ready for approval.
Okay,
Because
so
then
would-
we have to submit to New York State.
So would we be getting a more comprehensive, like, line by line to go through prior to that?
I
Or
will-
do we get it that night? Because that's not enough time to really go through it.
We will, I will design the budget presentation to be a little bit more comprehensive. You do end up getting the line by line with the budget hearing on May 6th. That will become available. the entire budget packet will be available.
So we're voting on it prior to getting.
You have to adopt the budget April 24th.
Okay.
I mean, more or less, you've seen every component up until this point with just these changes, these swing changes. So you've seen every single major component broken down. Then you'll get the line by line after that.
All right, thank you, everybody. Next item is new business. One item in new business, discussion of potential support for proposed legislation S6366 and A6597. The legislation, this is New York State legislation, that's the Senate and the Assembly number. It is described as authorizing the imposition of bail for certain offenses involving violent threats against school district staff, school staff, or a student. Tiffany, I will take your comments since this is your agenda item.
Thank you. I asked for this to be added to the agenda after we received as a board a letter in support from the Wappinger Central School District, which I thought was very good, offering their support to the New York State Senate and Assembly in support of the proposed legislation, which part of the justification, you explained what it is I gave you my background already, and part of the problem with trying to handle these school threat cases is that you have to rely upon an outdated law that's making of a terroristic threat, which doesn't always apply to juveniles. I can give you personal experiences. I can give you another experience where I know there was a school threat and the school went on lockdown and a young girl was urinated her pants because she couldn't get out to use the bathroom because the escort didn't get there in time to escort her to the bathroom. There's multiple reports of trauma, anxiety, long-term effects of being involved in a school threat. I'm sure you've heard about them here in Orange County alone. This basically would, what I'm asking for is for this board to send a letter to Albany supporting bail for juveniles who do make these school threats upon the school, individual serious threats, individual students, staff. It basically goes to the aggravated harassment law, which is already on the books. So we can set bail, and just so you know, the ultimate goal of the juvenile justice system is never punitive like it is for an adult, even though times are changing and it's not really that geared towards being punitive for adults anymore either. It's rehabilitation, but it gives you the opportunity to leverage the student into getting the rehabilitation that they actually need. So I would ask that the board support this. It is available online. Just to reference the Wappinger School District one more time, these school threats, they've caused substantial disruption to teaching and learning in elementary and secondary schools. Some cases, the threats have resulted in delays, early dismissals, or school closings. As a result of the threats of violence they've experienced, Wappinger School District has spent over $2 million. We just spent the last 2 hours talking about, $55,000 of over $2 million. One of the reasons why we're talking about increased security and safety in our schools. And it also providing support. When there's a school threat and somebody experiences trauma or anxiety, you have to bring in additional mental health professionals for counseling, additional local law enforcement, etc. I think we've all familiar with what school threats entail, sadly, at this juncture in time. So I would ask the board to support this legislation that's currently in Albany.
Okay, so you want to draft a letter to Albany from our board? Okay.
I will individually regardless. Individually, I plan to regardless, but I think as a school district, it really shows that we support our students. We talked about tonight several times putting our students first, and putting their mental health and physical safety should be paramount at all times.
Okay. Does anybody else have a comment on this issue, or should we just take a little show of hands to support, subject to reading the final letter? Christian?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll defer to Bass.
Okay, thank you. I think we have to debate maybe the choices on how to move forward. Like, first of all, we can take a vote who's in support, and then what do you want to do? Like, what other districts are doing? I mean, last time there was something kind of similar, and they were signing up to send one letter with all these districts. We chose not to do that. So let's have this discussion.
I have not seen a group letter with which to sign off on, but if you have seen one and want to share with the board, you're welcome to, but yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen that in this instance. Yeah. Yeah, on the regionalization issue, yeah. We drafted a letter. Our board drafted our own individual letter on the regionalization, yeah. So I have not seen a group letter that's asking for signatories for this issue, but.
I think Tiffany's proposing that we draft an individual board letter to go.
And we've all been provided the one from Wappingers. I would implore you to take a look at it. It would be substantially similar.
But like, what's the weight of individual letter compared to collective? I mean, like 10, 15 districts signing one letter together?
A letter signed on by more probably carries more weight, but again, I haven't seen that as an option. So if you have seen that as an option, please share it with us.
15 letters dumped on your desk at once versus one letter with 15 signatures. I mean,
yeah, you never know.
I'm not making a judgment call, but it's a better visual.
Christian.
So let me just preface this, like, so when this was as a NISBA resolution, Ms. Galliano, I asked you about this because I do respect your experience and your expertise in this matter. And it changed my mind and changed my vote as far as the NISBA resolution. And NISBA is already advocating for this on our behalf, in the state. So I think that there is actually, they have pushed for this, and we've probably gotten the advocacy updates, I think, in our emails from NISBA. I also, just the legislation itself, the sponsor in the assembly is a Democrat. It's Paula Kay, who represents Wallkill and Middletown here in Orange County, as well as a large chunk of Sullivan County. And Senator Oberacker is a Republican who has supported a lot of different bail reform initiatives. So I guess from that, I would also assume that this legislation is likely to pass because it is a bipartisan legislation. For our own representatives, I believe, although I might be incorrect about this, that Senator Skoufis has already indicated support for this, and he's indicated support for bail reform, meaning making changes to make bail reform. I was looking for the social media post and I couldn't find it, so I might not be accurate, but I do believe. And I actually talked to, just yesterday, I talked to one of Christopher Eakes' staffers, and his response on this was that we work well with Ms. Kay, Paula Kay, the sponsor of the bill's office, and we anticipate if we're not supporting it, we're going to, I don't want to quote them, put words in the public, but it basically says they will work, as assembly members who are side by side on that legislation. And so I already think that our letter is not going to move it for the two people that represent us in Albany. So I just want to say that where the letter from Wappingers was written by the superintendent. He has written as a Wappingers employee. I got that letter earlier than probably most people did. And he has written similar letters, and I think that he has been of the ilk to take a position on broader issues beyond the school district. I'm concerned about the practice of writing letters as a school board because we talked about activism in the schools, but there's also activism by school boards. This is a diverse community. I think there's a range of opinions in this community, and it's not clear what that is. So are we taking this position because this is a bail reform that affects perhaps something that might happen in a school? And I trust the process. I think we're already being advocated for on this issue through our representatives and our organizations. And so I'm not sure what additionally, so I guess what I'm trying to say in summary is that I'm not opposed to this. I voted for this in terms of the NISBA resolution, as I think the majority of this board did, just because looking at past your spreadsheet when you voted as a representative at NISBA. And I think it's best to let the process work out. And I don't know, as someone said, I'm not sure what 9 people writing a letter who only really represent themselves is going to change the legislation. And I think I would encourage anyone who's supportive of it to write a letter. And then I just want to say one other thing about the advocacy of this legislation in terms of preventing incidents at school. So in my classroom is the bereavement room. So if if there's an incident in my building and your child is dead, they're going to be told in my classroom, and that is something that how I keep my classroom every single day, because I know that is the room that they'll be brought to. So it is real, and I've been in a building where there has been an active shooter, and so I think I have some experience. I'm not the only one that has that experience. But I also don't think that anyone who would make a threat against a school is going to go through it and say, I was going to do this, but, they might put bail on me, so I might not do it. I don't think that's ever going to be the calculation, because the type of event is not subject, I think, to a rational calculation. And I think the literature on deterrence would suggest that for property crimes, deterrence has some effect, and for crimes of violence and passion, it probably has very little effect in terms of acting as a deterrent. So what this is mostly doing, I think, is facilitating what happens after a threat is made. And I would say that, Ms. Galliano, with your experience, you probably understand how that allows you to proceed after something occurs, and I think that's important as well.
Okay, so I'll just make a comment before we take a quick show of hands here. I agree with you, Christian, that it's sort of poor form for us to be supporting a bunch of legislation one way or the other, where this is different, similar to our efforts with the regionalization, is that had a direct impact on our school. This is not, this legislation, as I understand it, is not part of an overall bail reform, but it's specific legislation aimed only at threats against the school district, school staff, or students. So I agree. I kind of went through that calculus that you did of, is this germane? I think because it's legislation specifically tailored for schools, it's germane for us to comment on. So with that, I guess if everybody, if we can get a show of hands of folks who would support signing on to this letter. I'm seeing 8 hands. Okay. Tiffany, if you perhaps want to draft it.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
I'm traveling this week, so.
You did just say signing on to this letter. I think you mean creating our own letter. That is essentially
signing
co-signing the letter, but just want to be
yes,
specific.
Yes, signing onto a Cornwall Board of Ed letter. Yes.
Distribute it to the board.
Yeah.
And it can be tweaked, of course.
Okay, thank you, everybody. That completes the board's business for this evening, and the final item on our agenda is the recognition of visitors. I believe you're all here at the beginning of our meeting, so I won't read the spiel again. The floor is yours, public, if you choose to take it.
Hello? Sorry. Hi, I'm Amy McGovern from the Ivy League Preschool. So I was going over the numbers while you guys were bantering back and forth. And in the papers that I gave you, we were talking about a base rate for UPK. So that way, providers aren't making $17,000 per child per year. So one classroom that Cornwall is paying for right now, between Cornwall and the state, is averaging $200,000 before care and after care. That's a lot of money. If we put it to a base rate, we could be saving the district, Cornwall, over $300,000. And again, I'm doing rough estimates. I'm closer to $350,000. Even adding the 20 seats back on, you would still have over $300,000 added back into your budget, so you wouldn't be arguing these little things back and forth. You would have $300,000. It's been proven that UPKs at a base rate work. Why we're paying so much money over what the state gives almost $6,000, and Cornwall's paying close to $4,500. It's a lot of money, and it would be a lot of money back into your budgets, so you wouldn't have to be fighting back and forth. You wouldn't have to skimp on a security guard, skimp on a early intervention person. And adding more providers out there, you're giving people more choice. So have a good night.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kate S. Mazar, author of the recent report. I am not a spokesperson for my institution. It's important that I keep reiterating that over and over again. I'm here as a mom of a 3-year-old who is currently benefiting from incredible CPSE providers in this school district. My husband and I moved here to the school district for the schools. My home values depend on the quality of these schools. I am the one who pointed out that if we move to a flat rate, because the providers are getting money from us parents, money that we don't know about when we do the rankings. But if we can do a flat rate, we can get more seats, as Amy said, and next year we can be one step closer to universal pre-K here in Cornwall, and we can brag about that and increase our home values as that is a bragging feature. On top of that, I wanted to also mention that I wanted to thank the board for their preliminary draft of the budget with the 20 seats. Thank you. It's taken a lot of hard work from other activists who have been here a lot longer than me. And as parents of young children, we thank you incredibly much. And it is not an easy time to be in public education, so thank you for continued support of our schools.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Roxanne Dupree. I'm also a mom of a toddler who will start UPK next year. We're very excited that he got a spot, but I have a few questions that I want to bring up and just think through both the implications for this year and for the future. And so the couple points I want to make is we need more transparency. We need more transparency both in terms of what the school pays providers in addition to what the state pays. And we need transparency ahead of time when we are ranking our choices about what before and after school care will cost, because it's vastly different across the schools. And to be honest, the spot that my son got before and after school care is essentially keeping him in daycare full time. So that is not really what universal pre-K is about. And then I also want to urge you all to, of course, it's easier to talk than to put this into action, but all of these conversations about moving forward with the budget and with the 20 seats, and I want to thank you so much for approving these 20 seats for the budget vote in a couple weeks. But we need to know this ahead of time. This would have changed probably many people's rankings, and people might have not said yes or no had they been able to get a spot earlier on for their school of their choice. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other takers? Thank you all very much for attending a lengthy meeting, but one where we carried out very important business on behalf of our district, our students, our teachers, our parents, and our broader community. So thank you all. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Eleanor is so moved. Christian with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all. We will see you not in 2 weeks, but in 2.5 weeks on Thursday, April 24th.